My best friend invited the guy who raped me while I was unconscious to her wedding, forcing me to confront the buried trauma. Original post. I've been stewing with this info in my head nonstop and I can't seem to get over the icky feeling this entire situation gives me. I, 24F, have known Abigail, 24F, since sophomore year in high school. We've been through a lot and I consider us extremely close. After not seeing each other for a few months due to life circumstances and adulting schedules, we met for dinner last week. Everything was going great, just the usual bullshitting and talking about everything under the sun. The topic of Abigail's wedding came up because I'm also a bridesmaid in it. She proceeded to drop a bomb on me by telling me her fiancé and my ex-boyfriend have been actively hanging out. To top it all off, he's even invited to the wedding. A backstory to the situation. I was with my ex for about 4 years. We lived together and were actively talking about eloping soon. I have a seizure disorder and one night when I had one, he proceeded to have sex with me while I was unconscious. If it wasn't for the dried fluids on me the next morning, I would have never known because my memory is not worth a shit after a seizure. Because of the obvious betrayal of trust and boundaries, I immediately kicked him out. This was over 2 years ago and I still actively struggle with people being around me when I'm having seizures. Therapy has helped a lot, but I'm still not 100% healed from the entire ordeal. Am I blowing this out of proportion? I'm trying with all my might to not make a big scene out of all this. But on the opposite end, I am completely heartbroken that she would even allow him to be invited from the get-go. Mainly, I just need an outsider's perspective on this before I completely melt my brain from thinking about every possible angle of this ordeal in its entirety. Update, same day. I feel like I need to come back on here after getting some private messages of some people coming for my neck. Yes, I'm well aware I was raped. I apologize for not using that word, any of you could hopefully understand why that's hard for me to use to this day. Anyways, I appreciate all of you for the tough love. In all reality, I would really like to just crawl in a hole and stay there until the end of the year. This discussion has opened a few more doors than I anticipated, but I know it's for the better. Thank you all again, this means a lot more than you will ever know. I'll update once I've gained a bit more footing on my emotions, thoughts. Relevant comments. OOP should talk with her bestie about the situation and get her ex uninvited from the wedding. OOP. She does it fact no, same with her fiancé. This entire situation sucks. Definitely simmering on stepping away even though I've spent a fair amount of money on preparation for the wedding. Commenter 1, I would question why they expect you to be there. It's not exactly kind or sensitive of them. Commenter 2, because they don't think it's such a big thing. Because it didn't happen to them. So OP is just being dramatic about sex with her then BF. Per S I mean who has time to check for consent, right? Per S times 2. OOP, this comment is right here. This is exactly why I've quit talking about the situation altogether because people either understand where I'm coming from, or they don't. I lost relationships with people I thought I would have in my life forever because of them saying the simple statement of but he's your boyfriend. Literally the most thick-skulled remark to tell someone. It's so traumatic and soul-crushing to share this kind of info with someone, only for them to make those exact same remarks that you listed. Thank you for pointing it out because you're 100% right. Commenter 3. That's so disgusting. How does a man get hard and rape an unconscious woman anyway? I'll never understand. Like you can't move or speak, it's like he's raping a corpse. How could anyone do that? Then she is okay with her fiancé hanging out with a rapist that makes her a POS too. The fuck? I'm so angry at you. OOP, exactly. The events that unfolded that night have changed my relationship with my body/mind for the rest of my life. It was like my entire world burned to the ground in a matter of minutes. Update. Hi everyone. It's been a rough journey, but I hope you all are going to be proud of the outcome. After wearing rose-colored glasses the last couple of months, they were finally ripped off my face on Sunday. I received the confirmation that he was in fact going to be attending. To also point out, the confirmation was through a very cold text message treating this as some kind of sarcastic breaking news story. I was truly taken aback because as I stated, I was in denial that it wouldn't actually happen but the proof was right in front of me. Had to sit down with myself and my journal to really break my feelings down. After a few hours, I sent a lengthy reply back stating I was in fact not going to be attending and to count me out. Along with my reasoning as to why, even though she's well aware of the full story. Her response back to me was completely heartbreaking and a cop-out even though I shouldn't have been surprised. She's not in my corner, you all stated that, I just didn't want to believe it, and doesn't deserve me in hers. I've done so much and spent so much trying to help with this stupid wedding. Should have thrown it out the window or taken it myself to get a tattoo. But that's life and you live and learn. Anyways, Sorry for the rambled mess. But I appreciate you all being so kind to me when I truly needed it. I am struggling with the situation because it's hard to wrap my head around her justifications in the message she sent back. But I will be okay. I'm talking to my therapist about it and we'll work on healing. Sending love to everyone who's kept up with this shit show. Would love to hear of everyone's thoughts on the matter because it's been very therapeutic to me. Additional information from OOP regarding her friend's thoughts. OP, no problem at all. Although I will warn everyone who reads the following message is going to be pissed off. I know I was. She was literally talking in circles and contradicting herself and her so-called moral compass. Here is the message with names taken out. I expressed my concerns to fiancé's name, and always told him I am and always would be on my girl's side regardless. I cannot control who he hangs out with. I don't want to be that person with anyone, never have, never will. It's a terrible situation with everything, but in this particular event I have to put fiancé name first. It's his day, his wedding just like mine, and if he wants someone there, I don't feel right or don't know how to tell him no. That might be crappy of me and I get it, but it puts me in a weird middle situation that I definitely don't know how to handle best. I fully expected that it would cause you to not want to come and I completely understand, even though I'd prefer you there of course, but I knew you would have to do what is best for yourself. But the claim that I don't care, haven't cared makes me a little speechless. I don't really know how to respond to that, so we'll just leave it. I always have and always will fully support you with whatever you feel you need to do regardless. I'm truly and deeply sorry that this situation has caused you to feel this way about me, and I know nothing I say do at this point will change that. I wish you the best always. OOP's friend is being a doormat. OOP, I have fought for her in her idiotic ways ever since we became friends. She's needed me on multiple occasions due to them having relationship issues. He's an asshole, shocker I know, and guess who would drop everything to be there for her? Me. They will not last. I know that's awful for me to say, but it's just the way it is. Did OOP's friend knew about her situation with the ex-OOP? Unfortunately, she's the second person. Mom was first. I told, and it was the morning I kicked him out. She even helped me get a shower and all the ickiness off me because I was hysterical. She will never hear or see from me again. I can tell you that. She's made her bed. Commenter. I'm so sorry, Op. She was never a true friend and you deserve so much better than that. You don't hurt the people you love like this. You are way better off without her. Cheering on you for your healing journey. You're doing great. Am I the asshole for leaving after my partner stopped the pill and tampered with condoms to get pregnant against my will? Original post. My partner has been on the pill throughout our relationship and we've been in a bit of a battle these past few weeks over having children. I categorically said that I don't want them and started using condoms for double protection. This morning, she told me that she's pregnant and I asked how this could happen when we'd been so careful. She admitted to coming off the pill and piercing through the condoms that we have stored. I've said that I don't want this and that I'm not up for marrying into a relationship based on lies. She says she's keeping it and has already told her friends, as according to her, she'd done the test 8 weeks ago and was keeping it quiet in the hopes that I'd change my mind. I have no idea what to do here. Help. I am in England and am 29. Update. Firstly, thanks so much for all your comments. I didn't expect this to blow up quite so much as it did. Secondly, I want to get a few things straight as people seem to be struggling with timelines. A. My partner and I were due to get married in a few short weeks. We have had many long and involved conversations during our relationship about us both wanting to remain a child-free family over the years that we have been together. Around 2-3 months ago, they started to appear to change their mind, which I feel insecure and unhappy about as it is not something that I want from life, which is why I'd booked a vasectomy through the NHS. I cannot afford to go private as money is very tight, again another reason I do not want children. B. She admitted to tampering with condoms and said that she'd come off the pill several weeks ago. At that point, prior to her saying that kids might be an option for her, we were still having sex and I was under the impression that we were protected as she was on the pill. I have made no secret about how I do not want kids and she is fully aware of my reasons behind that, which I do not have to share with strangers on the internet. C. She has shown me a test and it confirms that she is pregnant. I have asked that she get an abortion. She has refused and I feel the trust has gone completely from our relationship. We are now in the process of canceling the engagement, which she isn't happy with at all and has said that I'm ruining her life. Now, for those people telling me to go to therapy, man up or that I'm lying. It's great that you disagree with me, but I'd never tell you to attend therapy if your worldview differed to mine, that I should be at fault after my partner has lied to me, apparently for months, and that I'm a liar. Here's a few other things for you. No, I do not like kids and I don't like entitled parents. I see it the same as disliking dogs, cats or birds. That is my opinion. Not for everyone and not all people have to tolerate your madness. My disinterest and lack of care towards them is one of the many reasons why it would be idiotic for me to be a father. Those calling bullshit on the 21+ wedding venue thing are just wrong. It's a stipulation of the venue we chose, nothing more and nothing less. The plain thing happened several years ago. The smoking area fiasco occurred over a year ago. Colleagues bringing their newborns into work is a continued pain and just really gets my goat, just like some people don't like Susan to eat her tuna mayo baguette. It shows a complete and utter lack of etiquette and thought by parents who are coming out in their droves to tell me how wrong I am about their decision. We'll provide updates as and when I get through all the comments. Be kind, people. Update 2. I spoke to a lawyer earlier today who has advised that as we are not married that I won't automatically be added to the birth certificate. Woohoo! My ex-partner can still claim that I'm the biological father, but without my consent to a DNA test is unlikely to be able to prove it, unless it is ordered by the court, but as I've been coerced into this, my lawyer thinks ex-partner and family will back down as I have evidence. The lawyer advised that I don't waive my parental rights yet, as it would indicate that I still believe the fetus could be mine. So I just have to bide my time and leave the country till this all blows over. The lawyer also suggested that I go self-employed but didn't divulge the specifics. My ex-partner has admitted to coming off birth control and piercing the condoms, which she said she'd done around 3 months ago, as she knew I was due a vasectomy early next week and thought I'd change my mind. She has refused to have an abortion, which is her right, and I've refused any involvement. Has anyone been through this before and managed not to pay out? I think I've got a pretty good case. Update 3. My ex-partner is going to keep the baby. She wants me to be involved in her life and says she doesn't want to lose me over something like this. A life-changing unwanted event? Yeah, sure, haha. I have said that I will be having nothing to do with this mistake and that all responsibility now lies with her and her family. She has been blocked from using any form of mobile communication with me, and I have now been sent 3 letters by her to my parents' house. The last letter included a scan of the embryo and a note requesting that I submit a DNA sample. The scan has confirmed that she is 13-14 weeks pregnant, which means that she kept this hidden for a good chunk of time. She has said that she will not have an abortion as this is what she always wanted, and that she will be taking me to court if I don't offer to help. The more time that goes on, the more she makes this an awful situation, the more I hate her. I refused the DNA test and sent her screenshots, on my lawyer's advice, of the conversation where she admitted to coming off the pill and piercing condoms in an attempt to get pregnant. She has now gone quiet, until this morning. She is pursuing legal action against me, my family, and is looking for a private arrangement of child support. The amount she wants for this bag of cells is triple the recommended amount via the government, and is one of the reasons she is trying to get me to admit that it's my DNA in that embryo so that I can keep me. I have just lost my job. I have no savings. This is going to ruin me, my life, and the only way out that I can think of is just to run off a cliff and hope for the best. I hate this. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP received mixed reactions. Relevant comments. OOP on having the conversation with his partner about children. OOP, we did have that conversation. 8 years ago. She changed the rules. She and I agreed on no kids 8 years ago. She then lied about birth control and put holes in the condoms we used to have sex. How the fuck is that me causing a problem? You sound like a delightful chap. She was my partner, now she isn't. Also, dude, regardless of where we are in our relationship, there's always respect for the women, not girls, that I'm with. I would not call my partner my girlfriend, because I don't like the term. As I mentioned in my post, we had the conversation 8 years ago, and as I've mentioned in other posts asking for advice, we've always spoken about being a child-free couple. My point here, if you read it with your peepers focused on the words, is that she made the decision to go off birth control without telling me at some point, I don't know when. After disagreeing on children ahead of us getting married, I started to use condoms when we had sex under the impression that this would be double protection, when it was actually no protection at all. So in answer to your final quip, it's not gone very well, but I don't need someone like you to say this sort of mad shit. OOP on dealing with vasectomy. He had to have a legal reason for needing one. OOP, I have visited my GP for a referral 3 times, 24, 26 and 29. The first 2 times I was denied due to my age and the idea that I might change my mind. Average waiting time, they said, can be between 6-9 months, but I don't know if that's a deterrent for men, as I was scheduled for my procedure 3 months after my approval. I am still going ahead with it. Update, October 16, 2024. Editor's note, Edited out the first part of the update as it is a rehash of the original post. Update 4. My ex's parents have now got involved and have lumbered me with a court-ordered DNA test, or the option to lay child support and have no involvement. I have dug my heels in and said that everything she has done will constitute involvement from the police, and am trying to avoid legal battles as I have no money or means to support myself right now, let alone a child I never ever wanted. My parents are now asking me to reconsider my position, and I want to scream every time they bring it up as they're trying to find a positive, and have said it might be the best thing to ever happen to me, and it makes me physically sick every time I think about my life being ruined over someone else's deception. I cannot sleep. I cannot focus. I'm so scared. I have now had a vasectomy. My sil threw a fit when I refused to pay for her bachelorette trip, and now she's blaming me for her fiancé leaving and the wedding being cancelled. My sister-in-law, Steffi, 26F, and I share a lot of history because we attended high school together. Back then she was a major bully, and I happened to be one of her favorite targets. Why not? I was a huge nerd in high school, and my appearance didn't help. I was quite tiny and wore braces, making me the stereotypical nerdy girl in a teenage high school movie. Instead of glasses, I wore braces, and my transformation did not occur until I was in college. Fortunately, I look considerably better now, having gained some weight and had my braces removed before beginning college. Not that there was anything wrong with my appearance before, but now I'm less likely to be bullied, which is all that matters. I met my spouse Andy at a college party a few years ago, when I was in my 3rd year. He was 3 years older than me and previously worked as a DJ on the side. I got pretty drunk at that party, and because my apartment was so far away and no one else was accessible, he offered to bring me back. He was kind enough to drive me home and even wrote his phone number on the back of my hand, saying I could call him if I wanted because he liked me. The next morning, I awoke with a severe hangover, but knew I had met someone wonderful. I called him, asked him out for a date, and that was all. We got along incredibly well on that first date, and I felt I'd found the one. But there was one issue: his sister. On our first date, we discussed our families, and Andy stated that he has a sister named Steffi. I joked about having a high school bully with the same name, but he looked at me seriously and said it could have been his sister, who had some behavioral issues back then. When he informed me the name of her high school, we discovered that his sister was my high school bully. It felt embarrassing, but I didn't let it interfere with our time together. I told him it wasn't a huge thing because I preferred him over his sister, and he agreed. After 3 months of dating, we decided to introduce each other's families. While it was reasonably easy for me to introduce him to my family, he found it tough and unpleasant because he was aware that his sister and I did not get along well. I was anxious the first time I had supper with his family, mostly because of Steffi. But it didn't go that terrible. His parents were really warm and friendly to me, and Steffi was cold and aloof, but it was still better than how she treated me in high school. I preferred this new version of her since it was much easier to deal with. She didn't say anything to me and kept our interaction to a minimum, which I viewed as a victory because it meant we could simply ignore one another and move on. I consider myself fortunate because this has been our relationship for the past few years. I haven't had much interaction with her, and she has never showed a desire in becoming friends with me. Even after Andy and I married 2 years ago, she only spoke to me as much as was necessary. So I'd say Stevie and I aren't particularly close, and we both enjoy it this way. After the way she treated me in high school, I doubt I'd want to be friends with her. Andy isn't bothered by this because he knows how harsh his sister can be. He doesn't mind that the two of us don't talk, and he understands that I haven't forgiven her for the way she devastated my high school experience because she has never expressed regret. You can't forgive someone who doesn't even apologize, and Andy understands that. He and Stevie have a regular sibling relationship, which I'm fine with because I know he does not perceive Stevie in the same way that I do. It's also been a long time since high school, and I don't want to urge my husband not to communicate with his sister or create unnecessary drama. She and I are now civil, and that is all that matters. Everything is okay in the family. I was surprised when Stevie contacted me a few weeks ago and asked if I wanted to join her on her bachelorette trip to the Greek islands. She didn't simply ask me over the phone, she invited me over to lunch. I was skeptical at first, but Andy urged me to try it, so I went. During lunch, she invited me to join the excursion. She was pleasantly kind to me, and she even apologized for how she treated me in high school. Instead of ignoring our shared history, Stevie addressed it for the first time. I was surprised since I hadn't expected her to admit to the constant bullying. When it eventually happened, I didn't know how to react. She apologized for how she had treated me, admitting she was just being a brat, and said she discovered her error too late. She also claimed that she had never brought it up, even after I began dating her brother, because she was uncomfortable confronting the past and didn't know how to face me after everything she had put me through. While discussing all of this, she even shed some tears, making it appear extremely sincere. As the naive emotional person that I am, I fell for it. I told her that I had forgiven her and that everything was in the past because I no longer had any issues with her. We were all adults, so we could deal with it the way we were supposed to, enjoy a few drinks together and forget about it. She appeared pleased with this, and we ended the lunch on a positive tone. She invited me to accompany her and her pals on their bachelorette vacation to the Greek islands because she wanted to make up for lost time and make me feel like a friend. Initially, I was apprehensive to agree, but she persuaded me. I eventually accepted since I believed it would be a nice experience and could help me develop a friendship with Steffi. I was tired of the tension we felt any time we were in the same room. After much debate, I agreed. I wanted to move on from the past and give our relationship a new start, and I saw no better way to do it than to go on a trip and let our hair down. That was a few weeks ago. Stevie and I have been in touch since then. She was being married next month, and we were due to leave for the vacation at the start of this week. However, the trip was cancelled due to a prank she played at the airport. She felt she could fool me into paying for the entire trip by breaking the news to me at the last minute, figuring I wouldn't cancel. She had no idea how easy it was for me to walk away, unlike her. I didn't care what her friends or she thought of me. We arrived at the airport approximately an hour before our aircraft was due to depart. We were all speaking when Stevie suggested we go get coffee, so I joined her. At the counter, she casually said, "Oh, by the way, I hope all your cards work internationally, because otherwise, you'll have a hard time paying for things." I informed her I was carrying cash for souvenirs and little purchases, but she explained that she meant hotel rooms, food, and even aircraft tickets, and that I would have to reimburse her for everything. I was really caught off surprise. We had never talked about this before, and half an hour before our trip was hardly the time to bring it up. She kept speaking in a casual tone, so I questioned if she expected me to pay for myself during the vacation. To my surprise, she said, "Not only for yourself, but for everyone on the trip, including my friends and me. I assumed you were going to sponsor the entire event, which is why I chose such an expensive location. I know you can afford it. Will that be a problem?" I still recall her exact words and can hear her tone in my brain, as if it were the most apparent thing in the world. But we hadn't talked about it, and I had never agreed to something like that. I questioned whether she was serious, and she admitted that she had expected me to finance the entire trip. She claimed if I didn't, she'd think I was stingy and selfish because I had the highest salary she knew. She couldn't think of any reason why I would say no. But I could think of several reasons, beginning with the fact that I never agreed to this. She did not even ask if I was comfortable with it. Yes, I did earn more than most others she knew because I am the vice president of a relatively large corporation. However, that did not obligate me to support her travel. We weren't there yet, especially since we were still developing our connection. And I was certainly not going to consider paying for a vacation for a group of people I didn't even know. More importantly, it was my money and my decision. She could call me a miser or a stingy person, but it wouldn't matter to me since I wasn't going to spend a lot of money on a vacation I didn't even plan and on people I didn't know or care about. After a while of standing there while she grabbed her coffee, I decided to stroll back to where everyone else was sitting, gather my belongings, and leave. This was silly, and I didn't want to cause a commotion in a public place, so I left quietly. Stevie raced after me with her coffee, while her pals tried to figure out what was wrong, but I didn't believe it was necessary to explain anything to them. I just walked out of the airport, hopped into the first cab I saw, and went before they could find me. As soon as I got into the cab, I decided to block Stevie so she couldn't call me and bother me further. The next thing I did was phone Andy and tell him what had happened. I felt awful for him since he had been so happy that his sister and I were finally getting along. I expected this trip to help our relationship, but we were both mistaken. When I called him and informed him what Steffi had tried to do, he was much more furious than I was. He said that was inappropriate behavior and that he would call his parents right away to discuss it. I believe he was more disappointed with his sister than I was, because I knew she was a bad person and wasn't surprised by what had transpired. Andy and his parents, on the other hand, had undoubtedly anticipated more from her, and she had truly disappointed them. I believe that's what really messed things up for her after that, because as they found out what she was up to, they were all furious. Andy didn't say anything to her directly, but I could see he wasn't going to let this go since it was demeaning to me, and he was disappointed in his sister. When I returned home from the airport, Dad informed me I didn't need to speak with Steffi anymore. Not that I needed to be informed twice, I didn't want anything to do with her in the first place. I didn't hear from anyone in his family for the rest of the day, including his parents, but I knew Andy was on the phone with them all day. I elected not to discuss it with anyone because tempers were running hot. I knew everyone was already unhappy, and I didn't want to exacerbate it. I just stayed silent and waited for the storm to pass. 2 days passed with nothing happening, but I did chat with my in-laws. They apologized for how Stevie had treated me. I told them that it was no big issue because it was not their fault. I saw how wonderfully they had reared their son, so I knew their parenting was not the issue. Stevie was solely responsible for how she turned out. Andy and I got back to normal quite shortly after that. I didn't ask him about the implications of Stevie's conduct since I wasn't interested in them. All I knew was that I wouldn't have to engage with her anymore, which was plenty for me. But then, 2 days after the incident, I learned that the wedding had been cancelled and her fiancé had left her. That was the indirect result of what she had done to me. When Andy and I returned home from work that day, he informed me that Stevie was blaming our family for her breakup with her fiancé. I wasn't sure how that was even logical, given that we hadn't spoken to her since the airport incident. Apparently, this all happened because, after Andy told his parents what Stevie had tried to pull at the airport, they called her and asked her to apologize to me. However, Stevie didn't believe she had done anything wrong. Instead, she began telling her parents that I was harsh and stingy, and she was relieved I had left. This irritated her parents, who informed her that they would no longer be paying for the wedding and that she needed to find someone else to fund her lavish occasion. Stevie attempted to seem unconcerned, but it was going to be difficult for her to cover all of the wedding expenses on her own because she had just resigned her job and started her own business a few months ago, which had yet to break even. It was not feasible to pay for anything herself. Despite knowing this, she refused to apologize or accept responsibility for her mistakes. The wedding was only a few weeks away, so this was becoming an urgency for her. According to Andy, after speaking with her parents, Stevie informed her fiancé that her parents would no longer be funding the wedding expenses and that she expected him to take over. This sparked a massive dispute between them because it was clearly unfair for her to drop this on him with only a few weeks till the wedding. That fight eventually led to the cancellation of the wedding. After Andy told me the whole story, I asked him how he knew everything. He added that following the altercation with her fiancé, Stevie arrived at their parents' house and argued with them as well. She had blamed both them and me for what had occurred. She largely blamed me, which I thought was unfair given that I had nothing to do with the incident. Stevie stated that she had to cancel her trip with her pals because I refused to pay for it. She now believed she had to cancel her entire wedding and that her fiancé would most likely end their relationship. I strongly disagree with the vacation situation, because there was never any talk about me paying for it. It was absurd of her to anticipate that. However, I feel horrible that her wedding was cancelled. I've been feeling guilty about complaining to my husband and becoming so agitated over the situation. I guess I'm just sad for her because I know she was looking forward to getting married. Honestly, I'm looking for some reassurance. Is it my fault for whining to my husband about my sister-in-law expecting me to support her bachelorette trip for all of her pals at the airport? Update. First and foremost, thank you so much for informing me that I am not at blame here. I guess I needed to hear that. I was feeling bad about everything, and it didn't help that Stevie had been posting depressing things about being betrayed and such. It's been 5 days since the airport incident, and even though I've banned her everywhere, I know she's been posting bizarre sad phrases to get attention. When someone questions her about it, she tells them her side of the story while claiming to be the victim. Any sorrow I felt over her wedding being postponed has vanished because, plainly, she will stop at nothing to make me look like the villain in her story. I don't have to feel awful for her. She has even gone so far as to tell people that, while she anticipated me to stab her in the back, she didn't believe her brother would ever promote or tolerate something like this, but she was plainly mistaken, and her brother couldn't care less about her feelings. Again, I feel compelled to highlight that she had never asked me if I was comfortable or willing to cover the costs of the trip for her and her friends. The fact that she had to cancel at the last minute and return from the airport was totally her responsibility. According to her version of the tale, we had discussed it several times, but I flipped out at the airport, threw a fuss and left, which she considered a major slap in the face. She states that she and her friends had to return home without a trip, which was quite humiliating. It's infuriating how she's been spreading lies about me. However, I'm relieved that most of the relatives she's been saying this to have contacted me, as it seems out of character for me. I was able to clear the air and explain my side of the situation. Most people believe me, so whatever she's doing isn't working. She's coming across as a complete liar and moron. Andy told me he wanted to speak with her and tell her she couldn't keep lying about us, but I assured him there was no need. What she's doing is backfiring, and instead of harming our reputation, she's injuring herself. We can simply let her carry on. Update 2. It's been about 2 weeks since we learned that Stevie was no longer getting married. She had been complaining about us to all of her relatives, but it didn't work because most of them didn't believe her and turned to me for proof. I told them the truth, and within a few days, almost everyone knew what had transpired. She realized there was no use in attempting to make us appear terrible anymore, so she gave up. We assumed that was the end of the story, but evidently not. She has recently moved in with her parents because she and her fiancé broke up and she has nowhere else to go. Her fiancé, a good guy, had offered to let her keep the apartment while he moved out, but she couldn't afford the rent on her own, so she decided to move back in with her parents. Andy and I find it ironic. She had so much to say when her parents told her they wouldn't be supporting her wedding, pretending she had it all under control. But now her life is crumbling apart, and her parents are the only people she can turn to. My in-laws, being the nice people they are, took her in despite her bad behavior. But now that she's living with them, you'd think she'd have the common sense to stop talking negatively about me and Andy, especially in front of her parents, who are also Andy's parents. However, she is one of the most dumb persons I've ever met. Even after my in-laws made it clear that she was not permitted to badmouth us or behave as if we were the villains, she continued to do so in front of them. She was continually attempting to turn them against us, so my in-laws decided to inform her that she could either acknowledge her mistake and try to become a better person, or she would no longer be allowed to live with them. That, of course, irritated her, and she has now taken to emailing Andy every day, reminding him that I not only destroyed her bachelorette trip and wedding, but also damaged her life because her fiancé deserted her and her parents continue to support me. As if any of that were my fault. Andy has not blocked her yet because she is a family member, but she is on thin ice. A couple more texts insulting me, and I'm sure Andy will visit his parents' house to confront her in person. I believe she is only venting her feelings, but it is wrong. Update 3. We did it, I just couldn't handle it any longer. She was going too far, saying the worst things about me while messaging Andy, believing she could get away with it. Unfortunately for her, we are not particularly friendly. She had called me every name in the book, referred to me as jealous and insecure, and even said that I didn't look any better than I did in high school, which was a complete falsehood. She understands how sensitive I am about my appearance and makes it a point to pick on it whenever she can, which has gotten pretty obvious at this point. I also don't see why she thinks I'd be jealous of her, especially since my life is clearly better right now. She honestly has nothing to make me jealous or anxious about. Anyway, these were the types of things she had been texting Andy, attempting to irritate us, and she was successful. Earlier this evening, we went to my in-laws' house to address her because she needed to stop thinking she could say and do whatever she wanted without consequences. We had already spoken with Andy's parents, and they knew why we were there, so they didn't ask too many questions and simply allowed us in. Stevie was sitting in the living room and appeared shocked to see us. She had the nerve to ask her parents why we were there, as if we weren't supposed to be there. Her parents did not answer, so I took over the conversation. I told her she needed to learn to stop her mouth because I'd had enough of her bullshit and wouldn't put up with her constantly talking about me. I made it obvious that if she didn't stop talking about me to anyone, I'd make sure my side of the story became public as well, which would not be good for her. She quickly erupted, accusing me of blackmail and alleging her family had ambushed her. When we urged her to be quiet and simply apologize, she refused. Instead, she began packing her belongings and left within an hour, knowing she was no longer wanted and going to stay with a friend. I'm confident she'll be back in a few weeks because no friend will let her live rent-free for long. Given how much of a miser she is, I doubt she will pay when she can simply return to her parents and live for free. But for the time being, we are all free of her, and I must admit that I am much better off. I believe everyone would agree with me on that. After 10 years in prison, I'm unsure whether I should reach out to my ex-girlfriend or leave her in peace. What should I do? Sorry for any mistakes, English is not my first language. When I was a university student, I fell in love with Daria, not her real name, obviously. She was the little sister of my best friend, so I considered her off limits, but my crush on her persisted and grew. She's one of those beautiful, brilliant people who is alive and breathing to make the world a better place. How could I not be drawn to that? One day, she told me she had feelings for me. And to my relief, my best friend didn't have a problem with me dating his sister either. So for 2 wonderful years, Daria was my girlfriend. I should have asked her to marry me. I don't know why I didn't. I suppose I thought I had all the time in the world. We were young and there was no need to rush things. We lived in a country that isn't exactly democratic, and we were political activists. I ended up getting arrested and going to prison for 9 years. Please don't think I'm some kind of monster for this. I don't want to go into detail in case it makes me identifiable somehow, but we didn't hurt anyone or do anything immoral. What we did is not even illegal in the country where I currently live, and our beliefs were far from extremist. I haven't seen or spoken to Daria since the day I got arrested. My best friend died shortly after, and Daria left the country, partly due to the possibility that she'd be arrested too. There wasn't any way for her to contact me while I was in prison, though apparently she contacted my dad a few times in the beginning. Things got even worse in our country while I was incarcerated, so my dad and I emigrated when I was released. We've been living in Western Europe ever since, and life is pretty okay. I live with my dad, and I have a steady, if shitty, job. Months ago I found Daria online. She lives in a neighboring country, 7 hours away by rail. She doesn't use social media too much, but from what I've seen there's no evidence of a partner or kids. And even if she's married, I'd be content just to be her friend, as I was for the first years we knew each other. Part of me desperately wants to reach out to her, and my dad has been encouraging me to do so, but I feel like it'd be too selfish. The circumstances of her brother's death were very traumatic for her, and I'm afraid that I'm just a living reminder of all the bad things that happened to us. And if she does have a partner, would my contacting her offend him and trouble their relationship? I don't want to cause her any more sadness. Time stood still for me while I was in prison, but I know it didn't for her or anyone else. She's done so well for herself. She's built a whole life, and I don't want to derail that life just because I feel entitled to a place in it. She might not even remember me at all. And even if she did invite me back into her life, I'd be nothing but a burden now, owing to my wrecked mental health. We've been apart twice as long as I knew her. Have I even the right to miss her as much as I do? For now I've contented myself with Googling her name every so often and seeing that she's okay. It just hurts a lot, and I don't know how to make it not hurt. I still love her with everything I have. I probably always will. Should I reach out to her, or leave her alone? If I do contact her, what should I even say? TLDR, unsure whether I should contact my old girlfriend now that I'm free from prison. Update 1. The short version is that I was wondering whether I should try to contact my former girlfriend after I went to prison for a long time. The consensus was that I should, and people gave very good advice on how to do that. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation, and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before, except my dad and people whose job it is to help me, lawyers, therapists, etc. And I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too. I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all. So I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying. At first she called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used to. But then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too. But happy also. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe, and this was more true than I could have guessed. Because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison, she was afraid that they would decide to quietly kill me rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation. After my sentencing, I was not allowed to receive correspondence or to have a commissary account at all, because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more lighthearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously I said yes, and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it, but unfortunately the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me, but she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since, and talking on the phone after I finish work at night, until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24 and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is what's for dinner. Other times it seems like we're trying to will dead versions of ourselves back to life in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed, and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness, or her warmth, or her empathy. She still cares about me, and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I want to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed, but I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her, and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people. I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I am extremely grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times, thank you. TLDR. I sent a message to my former partner. She was thrilled to receive it and we have been happily getting to know each other once again. Edit. Just to clarify, she doesn't have a husband or kids. As I said in my first post, I only considered contacting her because there was no evidence of a partner on her social media. But I understand that my first post wasn't visible for a while, so I can see why that may not have been obvious. Sorry for the confusion. Update 2. I've had a lot of people ask for an update, so here it is. The last 2 months have gone by very fast. I told Daria that I was nervous about the video call, and she insisted on having it right away so that I could get it over with and stop worrying. Seeing her made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. She still looks like herself, or even more beautiful, different only in the sense that she is fully an adult now. The place she lives is very different from our home country, with a distinct culture to which she has assimilated. That she had time to adapt and feel completely at home in this place broke the illusion that no time had passed. In hindsight, that was probably the real reason I had been so nervous, because I could no longer occasionally forget myself and pretend that nothing had changed. The hardest part was not being able to reach through the screen and put my arms around her. Sitting there and watching someone you love cry, from a distance, is not easy. I barely noticed that I was crying too. She didn't seem surprised at my appearance, but she did eventually look me over and ask if the food was shit where I lived. I explained about my jaw, and that I'm getting it fixed. Less dental work is required than I thought, but I need a surgery. Her response was to ask for my address and order groceries to be delivered, including a lot of soft snacks that are easy to eat and these meal substitution drinks that are actually tasty. She's sent them every week since, even though I tell her it's not necessary. When I wanted to pay her back, she laughed at me and said she owed me a lot of food, because I had kept her from starving to death in university. I loved being able to cook for her, and I suppose it makes her just as happy to feed me now. We talk every day and have made video calls a regular habit. It does me so much good just to see her face, and the awkwardness is mostly gone now. It's easy to talk to her. Last night, she brought her computer into the kitchen and talked to me while doing the washing up. It's amazing how mundane things like that can make me feel normal, and at home, in ways I forgot I could. I never thought I'd be that stupidly happy to see someone washing coffee cups. I'm beginning to think that the idea of home as a physical place is a misconception. She likes to send photos, to show me where she lives, what her life is like now. She was curious about how things are the same or different here. I didn't want to admit that I don't have much of a life to share back. Going places just didn't seem worth the effort. She is though. At first it was very small things. She would send a picture of a pastry she'd bought at a cafe, saying that she thinks her city has better pastries than mine. I would go out and get one so I could send her a photo too. Then it was beer, which city has better parks, interesting architecture, a department store, and so on. I figured out quickly that she was trying to coax me into going out more, but I played along to make her happy. I've seen more of my city in the past month than the entire time I've lived here before. I've been to the art museum, and finally joined my colleagues for a beer. Usually, I go places for short durations at the less crowded times, but I'm still going, which is something. Daria used to be very sociable. So I thought that whatever happened, at least she wouldn't be lonely. I was wrong. There is a lot she could never tell her friends, because they can't relate. They would feel sorry for her and cease to be equals, she says. Our experiences are different, but we are more able to understand each other than other people could. And despite her own burden, she has quietly picked up half the weight from my shoulders without ever being asked to. I am in awe of her, simply for being the kind of person who would. For Women's Day I sent her some orchids, and she was very happy that I remembered her favorite flower. The things I can do to make her smile are so small, and she deserves so much more than I know how to give her. But I would do anything for this woman, and I'm learning. There are protests happening where she is, with riot police and tear gas. Whenever this happens, she feels nervous and has difficulty sleeping. Now, at least I can stay on the phone with her at night so she's not alone. Aside from the anxiety, there is also a sense of nostalgia. She talks about when that was us, making noise in the street. I'm glad she has good memories too and doesn't have to be alone with them anymore. Finally, the reason I'm updating now. She is coming to visit. We were talking last night and I mentioned that a church near me has special windows designed by an artist she loves, and I was thinking about going to see them eventually. She said it would be unfair of me to go without her, so I invited her to come with me. And then somehow it turned from vague future plans to being scheduled for next Saturday. She was going to come for the day, but I told her it was silly to travel so far to stay for such a short time, and suggested she stay the entire weekend. So she will be here from Friday until Sunday. I haven't really had time to be nervous yet, but I'm sure I will. Thank you again to everyone who has given advice or encouragement, it is very much appreciated. Dad wants me back to avoid my grandpa's financial penalty after kicking me out and lying about the rent. At the age of 14, I, F21, lost my mother. I was 17 when my dad got married again. In addition to my stepmother's daughter, F15, they also had a boy, M3, and a tiny girl recently. I've been working since I was 16 in order to save money for personal purchases. When I turned 18, my father told me that although he would still pay for food and other necessities, I was now an adult and should begin paying a symbolic $500 in rent. We argued and I was unhappy, but in the end, I accepted this agreement. Dad told me 7 months ago that I had 2 months to leave because stepmom was expecting a kid and they would need my room. Considering that they both have private offices and that stepmom hasn't had a job since the birth of my baby brother, this was odd. They insisted that I move out though. To be clear, there isn't much drama or conflict between stepmom and me. Who knows, but I don't believe this was an evil stepmom act. I'm actually pretty close to my stepsister. I support her with her schoolwork and help her work through her personal issues. I adore her. To recap, I was at a loss for what to do. I can't afford to live alone because I work part-time and attend college to study civil engineering. In order to find a solution, I called my aunt and asked if I might stay with her for a while, offering to pay the rent. She said I could live with her for free because she was surprised by what my dad was doing, but she also promised to speak with my dad. When Grandpa visited our home the following day, he and Dad had a private discussion. Although I couldn't hear the words, I did hear Dad's irate voice. Grandpa eventually arrived at my room and gave me 3 options. First, I could stay with Dad and stepmom without paying rent. Secondly, I could live with my aunt or with Grandpa and Grandma. Third, Grandpa would pay my rent and other bills while I found a place of my own. He said I could stay with Dad if I wanted to and that I didn't have to make a decision right away. At first I was happy that I could stay since I believed that everything had been settled. However, Dad and stepmom became openly hostile toward me in the days and weeks that followed, and I felt very uneasy in my own house. Cassie, my stepsister, even saw and inquired as to why they were upset with me. When I finally made the decision to move out, I told Grandpa, who promised to take care of everything. He relocated me into one of his rental apartments a few weeks later. Grandpa purchased me necessities like a stove and refrigerator, and the flat is beautiful. He even gave me a check for $15,000, claiming that it would assist me start living on my own and that I could stay there for as long as I wanted without paying rent as long as I was working or studying. My dad and I haven't spoken much since I moved out. Even though I miss everyone, especially my stepsister, he hasn't come, and I haven't gone to see them either. I'm still hurt though. My stepmom gave birth 2 weeks ago. It was pleasant, if a little odd, to visit them in the hospital. A few days later, Dad called to tell me that I should return home since he and the kids missed me. He went into endless detail about how much he regretted asking me to leave. I promised to give it some thought. I went to see my aunt yesterday and shared what Dad had said with her. With a laugh, my cousin said, "I'm sure he does." I wanted to know what he meant. They then disclosed a great deal of information that I was previously unaware of. It turns out that my aunt's house and Dad's house are actually owned by Grandpa. To ensure that no one in the family would have to worry about necessities like food and housing, Grandpa had formed a similar arrangement with all of his children and some grandchildren. I had called my aunt at the time, and she had called Grandpa, who was upset with Dad for charging me rent in addition to putting me out. Grandpa visited our home that day and sternly reprimanded Dad, even threatening to kick him out. The petty part begins here. Do you recall the $15K that Grandpa gave me? Over time, I paid Dad that much in rent, and now Grandpa is forcing him to reimburse me. In addition, Dad is being charged $1,200 by Grandpa to cover the rent loss on the apartment where I currently reside. I may be naive, but I was unaware that Dad wasn't earning much money by himself until recently. We had a lovely home, vacations, and a comfortable lifestyle, but I suppose Grandpa was pitching in behind the scenes. With 3 children living at home, a single source of income, and the additional burden of repaying Grandpa, my cousin believes Dad is currently having financial difficulties. According to my cousin, Dad wants me to return home because he thinks that if I do, Grandpa won't punish me as much. To be honest, I have no idea what to do. Although I've been enjoying living alone for the past 6 months, I still miss them. I miss the life we had before everything happened, and I miss my siblings. But I'm also offended since it appears that money is the true reason he wants me back. First update. Let me make it clear that my grandfather and aunt are from my father's side of the family before I respond to some queries. I don't have a lot of contact with my mother's side. I have uncles and aunts, but they don't live close by, and my maternal grandparents died before Mom did. Even though I get along well with my 2 other uncles on my dad's side, my aunt has always been like a second mother to me, especially since my mother passed away. It was implied that my stepsister would have to begin paying rent when she reached 18, and my stepmother was aware that I was doing so. I don't know though, if she was aware that Dad didn't own the house or how much Grandpa had contributed financially. Monday's update. I called Dad the day following my post to let him know that I had made the decision not to move back. I just explained that I was comfortable where I was and that going back would feel like a step backward, without mentioning anything I had been taught. However, I did mention that I wanted to stay in contact and that they were welcome to have me over for dinner at any time. I also mentioned how much I wanted my stepsister and stepbrother to visit me at home. Dad didn't seem angry, but he did sound disappointed. He concluded by saying, "We'll see," and went on. Although I was also a little let down, he called me on Friday to ask if I would like to join them for lunch on Sunday. We decided to have dinner on Thursday as I indicated that I already had plans with Grandpa and Grandma. Despite the fact that we communicate and chat frequently, I haven't yet told my stepsister about any of this. Although she hasn't heard her parents talking about me, she did say that her maternal grandmother, who is staying over to help with the baby, is incredibly annoying. That made me giggle. I'll try speaking with Dad on Thursday because I didn't want to raise Cassie's expectations only to have him reject my offer of a sleepover. My most significant news is that I recently returned from a visit with Grandpa and Grandma. I told them I wanted to know everything that was happening, but we also had a great day together. I felt as though I had been living in a world of deception, and I was no longer a child. There were a few extra specifics, but the key points were the same as what my cousin and aunt told me last week. Due to Dad's limited savings, Grandpa has been covering many of our essential expenses, such as school, medical care, etc. Grandpa also informed me that prior to her death, he and Mom made the majority of the contributions to my college fund. I feel a little foolish for not recognizing it sooner, but I suppose it makes sense. In order for my stepsister to feel included and have the same possibilities as the rest of her siblings, Grandpa has also established money for them. This man is amazing. I realize how fortunate I am to have him, and I adore him so much. Numerous others have made helpful rather than critical remarks, emphasizing how fortunate I am to have grandparents and other family members who can support me. I'm really appreciative and hope to help others the way they help me in the future. I also shared my concerns about Dad's financial status with Grandpa. He reassured me that Dad would be all right, he would simply need to practice more frugal spending for a bit. Grandpa vowed to never let any of his children or grandchildren to endure hardship or lack basic necessities. He's attempting to teach Dad a lesson that he probably ought to have learned long ago, as many of you have already noted. I have therefore made the decision to keep my distance and not tell Dad that I'm an expert. I think it's best if he keeps believing I'm in the dark, even if several of you suggested that I approach him. Finally, we discussed the reasons behind Dad's expulsion of me. I could see that Dad's actions had hurt both Grandpa and Grandma, but Grandpa also had no response. He claimed that he approached his father for an explanation but received none. I'll continue to make an effort to connect with my siblings outside of my father and stepmother for the time being. Additionally, I'll attempt to schedule weekly dinners with them. Even though I'm aware that most of what you have all stated about my father is accurate, I still want to make an effort to keep in touch with him, if not for his benefit then at least for the benefit of my siblings and me. Don't worry though, I won't allow him to harm me once more. Update from dinner. Last Thursday. A few individuals messaged me to inquire on the dinner's success, but there isn't much else to say. I went there after work on Thursday, and my goodness, I missed my siblings terribly. I stayed with them most of the time. My baby sister is so adorable that I could eat her up, and my baby brother has grown up a lot. No matter what, I never want to be separated from them again. The only person I maintained in frequent communication with via phone calls and texts was my stepsister, Cassie. I unintentionally included her name in my initial post. She is a wonderful lady, and while she is aware that I didn't leave amicably, she is unaware of all the specifics or financial information. She was overjoyed when I asked whether she would want to spend some time at my place for an overnight. She would have started packing right then and there if I hadn't intervened. Guess where my stepmother's mother is staying while she's still there assisting with the baby? In my former room. The baby's room has been converted into a guest room, and because it's closer to the master bedroom, it's now my stepmother's former office. It was a little painful. Her mother continued to monitor me, even though I've only met my stepmother's parents a few times and they've always been kind to me. She was continually watching me, as if she thought I might take anything, regardless of where I went or what I did. She refused to leave my side while I held the infant. In any case, supper went as smoothly as you can imagine except from that. I was happy to see my siblings and play with them for a few hours, even though it was a little weird. I told Cassie at the end of the night that we should have a sleepover that weekend. Absolutely not, her grandmother said right away, but I was surprised when my stepmother intervened. She said I could pick Cassie up for dinner on Saturday after soccer practice if she wanted to. My stepmother gave me a very sincere hug as I was leaving. We've always had a decent relationship. As I stated in my first post, but I kind of came to believe that she's just a bad stepmother because so many people have said it. I felt really emotional and bewildered when I left. In the afternoon of Saturday, I picked Cassie up. She compared shawarma to a pork burrito when we first tasted it after watching Inside Out. There isn't much of a difference. Spending the day with her was wonderful, and I'm thankful that she's in my life. After dropping her off on Sunday, I walked inside to visit my other siblings. Dad was out meeting a friend from work, so he wasn't there. In case you were wondering, my stepmother used to work for an advertising firm but is now a stay-at-home mother, and my dad is a lawyer. On Friday, we have another supper planned. I don't want to bring it up right now, but I'm not sure why Dad wanted me to move out or why he charged me rent. I would prefer not to take the chance of destroying my bond with my siblings. Since things are finally settling down to regular living, I'm not sure whether there will be any more updates. Second update, things have been quite routine since my last update. The Friday before last, my dad and I had another meal. I chose to ignore stepmom's mother, who I'll call Evie, for evil, even though she was still giving me the evil eye. I was considering taking my younger brother to the park yesterday, and I had planned another supper for last Friday. Dad needed to talk to the entire family, so he called on Wednesday to ask if I could reschedule and go to Grandpa's on Saturday instead. In the interim, Cassie has informed me that my stepmother, I'll refer to her as Shay, and Evie have been having a lot of arguments. Shay's father, who I'll call Libby, short for lying bastard, arrived last Sunday. On Monday, Libby and Evie returned home after what seemed to be a major altercation. I went to Grandpa's yesterday afternoon, and my aunt was there as well. Dad and Shay showed up shortly after with Cassie. Dad apologized to my grandparents and to me, obviously humiliated. Additionally, Shay expressed regret to me and Dad explained the events of the previous few years. Cassie was there for the entire chat, but she didn't know all of it, while I did. Though it may be a little disorganized, I will attempt to explain everything here. Grandpa and a friend founded a business years ago, and it was a huge success. Grandpa sold the business and made a substantial profit when Dad turned 25. He made the decision to give a home to each of his children. With the understanding that they would use it to pay off debts or purchase homes, he gave each of his children $350,000. Grandpa didn't want his children to experience homelessness since he had witnessed it happen to others. But instead of purchasing a house, Dad relocated to New York to establish his own legal firm and grow into a well-known and prosperous attorney. However, things didn't work out so well for him, as you may expect. When he ran out of money and was unable to pay his rent half a decade later, he turned to Grandpa and returned home. Grandpa assisted him in finding employment with a friend. After some time, Dad began to rebuild his life, moved out of Grandpa's house, rented a house, met my mother, and started dating her. After a while, he proposed to her after they fell in love. Grandpa came to them and promised to give them a house before they were married. His other children had already heard about this and approved of it. The house would remain in Grandpa's name and eventually go straight to Dad's children in Grandpa's will though, because he didn't completely trust Dad and he wanted to make sure Dad's future children would always have somewhere to live. I was therefore wrong in the past. Only my dad and 2 of my cousins reside in the houses that Grandpa owns. My uncles and aunts do not. After that, I was born, and for a while, everything was fine until my mother died. When Dad found it difficult to care for me by himself, Grandpa began to provide financial support. After a few more years, Dad got to know Shay. However, Dad never mentioned any of this to her since he felt ashamed about not owning the house and Grandpa's financial help. Dad was only a mediocrely accomplished lawyer in her eyes. She asked if she could become a full-time stay-at-home mother after they were married and she fell pregnant. Too ashamed to refuse, Dad assured her it was all right. Dad was having even more trouble now that he had 3 children and a stay-at-home wife. Dad's savings were running low, but Grandpa was still assisting. In order for Grandpa to continue helping for the benefit of the children, Dad acknowledged that he partially blamed Shay on Grandpa, suggesting that she was to blame for his financial difficulties. Let's now discuss Shay's parents, Leigh and Eby. They started telling Dad that I was being spoiled, that I would handle money carelessly, and that I had an easy life because they thought he was a successful and affluent lawyer. Leigh would tell Dad stories about how, at my age, he had to pay his father rent and how he did the same with Shay's brother, who pulled himself up by his bootstraps and became successful and independent. It seems that Dad was affected by that attitude. He started to worry that rather than succeeding on my own, I would become reliant on him or, more likely, Grandpa and his wealth. Even though Grandpa had successfully raised 3 of his own 4 children, he began seeking parenting counsel from his in-laws instead of Grandpa because he was afraid I would become like him and want his dad's financial assistance. He told me that he felt humiliated, which seemed to influence a lot of his choices, when I questioned why he didn't speak with Grandpa first. In reality, Leigh came up with the rent notion. According to Dad, his first intention was to save the money and then return it to me. However, Shay was unable to save the money since she had a new child, was unemployed, and had to maintain appearances for her family. Additionally, he misled me at the time by claiming that Grandpa had done it with his children and that it was common for parents to collect rent, a claim I only learned to be untrue 8 months afterward. That fact, however, seemed insignificant at the time given everything else that transpired. I didn't reveal something in my earlier posts because, at the time, I didn't believe it was important. I belong to the LGBTQIA+ group. I've been honest about this, and before my mother died, I told her about it. I don't market it, but this will be important in the future. Anyway, to continue, Leigh starts to confide in Dad. Among other things, Leigh starts recommending that I move out, and Dad starts talking to him about his financial difficulties. Dad initially dismisses the notion. Then Dad begins to worry when Shay gets pregnant again. At that point, Leigh and Eby approach Dad and offer to assist him out, not just by providing financial support but also by having Eby move in with them once the baby is born. Since Eby would be present to assist with the children, Eby even offers to persuade Shay to return to work. However, they stated that I would have to move out in order for this to occur. They said that it was time for me to leave the nest, that the house couldn't hold Eby, and so on. Eventually, they persuaded Dad that my moving out would benefit everyone. Dad didn't share any of this with Shay. He just said that he believed it was best for me and that it looked like a wonderful opportunity given the impending baby. At first, Shay was opposed to it, but she gave in to Dad after he played the I know what's best card. I have to move out, they said. In a recent piece, I explained events from my perspective. Grandpa went to Dad's house that day, and they got into a heated argument, not just between Dad and Grandpa but also between Dad and Shay. At that point, Shay learned that Dad was reliant on Grandpa, had virtually little funds, and did not own the house. At this point, Dad's agreement with her parents remained a secret. After that day, I asked Shay why she was acting so rudely toward me, making me feel uncomfortable and wanting to leave. After looking astonished, she apologized and began to cry, stating that she was upset with Dad and never with me. She was unaware that she was somewhat to blame for my departure. I told her it wasn't her fault, and I was crying too. Gentlemen, I believe her, even though I know a lot of you have said negative things about her. And I don't blame you. You can't fake the expression on her face when I informed her I didn't feel welcome. She was merely attempting to give me space, but I'm beginning to believe that she is just as much of a victim of Dad's behavior as I am. To recap the facts, once I moved out, Grandpa stopped providing Dad with financial help and began charging him rent for the house. The one expense he kept covering was Cassie's schooling. Now that everything is public knowledge, Dad and Shay have had to reduce their spending, which includes selling her car and giving up nice meals and snacks. They received some financial assistance from Leigh and Evie, but Shay was already under a lot of stress and was pregnant. It was evident to me that Grandpa shared my real sympathy for her and her ordeal. He probably had no idea how much anguish he was causing her. I don't know how he will handle the house with Dad. Evie moved home with Dad and Shay prior to the baby's birth. Things appeared to get back to normal after Shay gave birth, but with the new baby, Dad began to feel even more bad about what had happened. He contacted me again at that point, as I had informed you. Let's fast forward to my first dinner with them. After I left, Dad and Shay observed that Evie was acting suspiciously. Although they talked about it, nothing came of it. After Shay continued to talk to Dad about her mother, Dad began to share with her the things he discussed with Evie and Leigh, including money, raising children, and other subjects. Shay approached her mother after my second dinner, and they got into a heated argument. Evie apparently yelled something like, "I can't believe you're letting that slur back into your home after getting rid of her," during the dispute. It was at that point that Dad finally understood and recognized what a fool he had been. Evie was expelled. They got into another argument when Leigh arrived to pick her up. In reality, Dad wanted to pretend nothing had occurred, keep me around, and discreetly mend our relationship, but Shay stood her ground. She demanded that he tell Cassie and the rest of the world about everything, not just to me. Thus we reached the current time. Everyone was crying, including Dad, my aunt, Grandpa, Shay and Cassie. Grandma simply held me close without saying a word. Dad said there would be no more deceit, no more falsehoods. After Dad and Shay left, I stayed at Grandpa's because I wasn't well enough to drive. I got home this morning, took a long shower and sobbed a lot. Now, I'm composing this to see if it helps me sift through my feelings and make sense of everything. That must be the end of the tale. Right now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I feel sorry for Shay and Cassie, sad and enraged. I experience both everything and nothing. Tomorrow, I'll give my therapist a call to see if I can schedule further appointments. Although I've been going every Friday, I doubt I'll be able to wait a full week. Having said that, I guess the person who wagered on evil step-grandmother has won. I want a brand new hot tub. Is this a literal white elephant gift and upkeep nightmare? Should I keep or sell? Original post. Like the title says, I won the grand prize in a raffle. It's a beautiful 6-person hot tub, and I would love to own one someday. The thought of snowboarding all day and coming home to a hot tub soak sounds amazing. I do have a backyard that has room for it, but I would need to get electrical outlets added, would need to flatten the ground for a concrete pad, possibly get plumbing, then there's the delivery, accessories and upkeep. Are there any frugal hot tub owners out there? What is upkeep like? Do you really use it often enough to justify the cost? I'm not afraid to do the hard work necessary to install it, but wondering if in the long run am I wasting all this money to upkeep costs? My wife keeps suggesting that we sell it and use it for a trip. What do you think? Some of OOP's comments, relevant comments. Commenter. I installed a hot tub at my last house. If you are going to use it and enjoy it, it's never going to be cheap. Chemical and water costs aren't too bad, and in my opinion it's not that much of a hassle, but leaving the tub on 24/7 365 has considerable electricity costs, especially if you're in an area cold enough to snowboard. Our hot tub was costing us about $200 a month to run in the winter, and about $50 a month in the summer. And that's just water, electricity, and chemicals. That doesn't include repair and maintenance costs, which are low the first few years but get intense once the tub gets older. Personally, I want to be using it a few times a week to have it feel worthwhile. It was worth it for me at the time, but I don't think I'd make the choice now. I'd just go on an extra couple of Airbnb weekends at places with hot tubs. I've decided that outdoor saunas are much cheaper and easier to use and maintain. That's what I'll be looking at for my next home instead of a hot tub. OOP, all good advice, thank you. Commenter, they will have a cash value but that doesn't mean they can take the cash instead. A lot of times companies donate them as a write-off and they get the benefit of marketing and exposure. You don't have the choice between the prize and cash. OOP, this is most likely the case with my prize. I think I'd have to sell it on the FB marketplace or something similar. Commenter, check first. Why would you assume this is most likely the case? And now that I'm so invested in this, let me know. OOP. It was a raffle at the birthday party at the company my wife works at. The hot tub place is next door and was donated to the raffle after the owner did a work for trade thing with their business. So knowing a little of the behind the scenes maneuvering, I'm fairly sure it's a write-off donation and there's no cash prize equivalent. But I'm still going to ask. Commenter, did you have to provide your SSN when you accepted it? That would be a red flag of getting taxed on it. OOP, I haven't accepted it yet. Someone reminds OOP they'd probably need a permit and/or inspections. Didn't even think about the permits and municipal inspection. Good points, thank you. Commenter, OMG, my dream, keep it. OP, it was my dream too. I went to the raffle specifically to try and win the hot tub, so now that my dream came true I'm really trying to make the happy ending work. After all these comments I'm leaning toward selling it. The power costs are definitely a factor where I am. It's already been 300 plus some months. Commenter, snowboarder with hot tub here. Do it, you'll never regret it. OOP, damn it, LOL, the choice is so hard. I may try and see if they will do a sauna instead. Bought a season pass to Brighton this year, gonna be up there a lot. Commenter, where are you located? I'm in the market for one if you're looking to sell and we happen to be not too far. Feel free to PM if you'd like. OOP, Utah. Update post. Thank you all for so many helpful comments. Like I said, I was super excited to own a hot tub. I thought I had the perfect spot for it and was ready to do everything I could to get it installed. All the commenters brought up a lot of great points that I didn't consider. One was the increase in energy bills. Our electricity has recently undergone a 30% hike and in the summer is over $300 a month now. Adding a hot tub in the winter would have added $100-$200 per month to that bill, as we live in a cold, snowy climate. 2 was the spot we picked out for it. After measuring where we thought it would go, we realized the spot wasn't big enough to fit the tub and we would have to put it somewhere that had a bit more room. This meant I would have had to run a longer electrical line, had to rip out part of an edged pathway and build a new gravel pad. The new spot had no privacy, it was in direct view of the neighbor's window, so adding some sort of privacy barrier would have been another cost. And it was still 20 feet from where we wanted it, which means in the winter I'd have to shovel a walkway to it and clear it all off. I know in the winter this is going to be a big factor in not using it, because it wouldn't be convenient to get to. There was the HOA, and resale of the home. A lot of people mentioned that hot tubs can be considered a liability to the home when selling, as well as issues with HOAs, permits, and inspections. That wasn't something we considered, and while we do plan on being in this home for a while, it's not our forever home. And 4 was the total cost and taxes. It will be reported to the IRS as a $10,000 prize, so I imagine I'd have to pay anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 extra taxes next year, in addition to the $2,000 I would have had to spend on the electrician, adding a gravel pad, delivery fees, as well as the increase in water and power bills monthly. That could be something like $5,000 getting everything up and running and installed, and not something I anticipated spending before Christmas. So, here's what I did instead. I asked the owner of the hot tub place if I could convert the hot tub I want into a sauna instead, and he said yes. So I'm getting a super nice infrared indoor sauna that will sit inside my basement. It doesn't need expensive new power lines run, and no other associated upkeep costs going forward other than the power used. All in all, I'm super happy with the outcome. A tiny bit disappointed I don't get to soak in a hot tub, but I can still go snowboarding all day and come home to a nice heat soak. Thanks again, everyone. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, that's a bloody clever solution. I love that you negotiated. Very few people realize that negotiation gets results. See, why Flora is about to recruit an entire office building to negotiate with the landlords about getting some much needed accessibility upgrades. I mean, I'm a mediator, so I would say this. But jolly good for you anyway. OOP. Thank you. Someone in the original thread mentioned a sauna and it got me thinking. I work with a lot of small businesses, so I'm used to negotiating and finding solutions. Commenter. And the post doesn't include the chemicals that are added to the water regularly. OOP. A lot of the original commenters said that those weren't too expensive, so I didn't include that, but definitely a factor as well. Commenter. Saunas are such a godsend and genuinely beneficial for your health. Brilliant move. And I know sauna rooms can be a nice incentive when selling OOP. Good to hear. We went with an infrared one because of the health benefits. I'm excited to try it out. I get uninvited from my brother's wedding, then get harassed by his family for not caring enough. Original post. This whole thing is so weird. 27 am gay. I came out at 16 and my parents told me they would always love me, but to not mention it to my older brother who I'll call Brick. Then 19 30 now. When I was confused and asked why, they said that Brick had expressed some awful opinions about gay people. I limited talking to Brick until I moved out at 18, which wasn't much of a problem because we were never close. I went to uni, got a good job, and an awesome boyfriend, 28 in my home city. Me and my boyfriend Angel live a peaceful life. Peaceful until a few days ago when I got a call from my brother. I was concerned that Brick was calling me, as we have never messaged before, just had each other's numbers for emergency purposes. I picked up because maybe there was some emergency happening. He opened the call with an annoyed, "Hey man," and I knew something was up. He said he was getting married to his fiancée Yen, 24 next year. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I was like, "That's great, Brick," and asked some boring wedding things that he begrudgingly answered. He then told me invites were being sent out in a couple weeks, and that I could bring a +1. Here's where I made the mistake that started this mess. Without thinking like an idiot, I said, "Cool, I'll bring my boyfriend." Major mess up. Brick immediately started yelling insults down the line, screaming that he wouldn't have an FF slur at his wedding. I didn't say anything and just hung up. I was rattled by hearing those words from my own brother's mouth, even though I knew his feelings about people like me. I told Angel, and he comforted me, ordering in my favorite restaurant and watching movies with me, which was awesome. We went to bed later and I felt alright the next day. I sent my parents a message that Brick invited me and uninvited me from his wedding pretty much in the same breath, and went on my way to work, not a clue of the crap storm waiting for me when I got off. When I turned my phone on again after my shift, it was blowing up. Messages and calls from my parents and relatives galore asking me what the F happened. I phoned my parents back when I got home and gave them the rundown of what happened and said I honestly didn't care because it's not like Brick would be coming to my wedding anyways. My parents immediately chastised me for my obvious disinterest and disregard of my brother's life, and told me I should be apologizing to him for bringing my personal life into his wedding. What? I basically told my parents to screw off and have been getting bombarded with messages from relatives to apologize to my brother and get my invite reinstated, and apologize to my parents for disrespecting them, but I really don't want to. Angel's reassuring me that I did nothing wrong, but it's still nagging me. AAETA, relevant comment. OK_number_4988. Why did your brother sound annoyed at the beginning of the call? Did he already know? Or was he being forced to invite you by your parents? Seems weird. OOP, he's never been my biggest fan, honestly. We were very different as kids, like polar opposites, and he didn't like that. Very on brand for him. He definitely didn't know I was gay before the call. My parents have kept it very under wraps for years. In terms of if he was being forced to invite me by my parents, I really have zero clue. Update post. My OG post got locked was removed per some misunderstanding/confusion with the AITA mods while trying to post this update, but I'll just post it on my page here without an r/ if anyone wants to see it. Y'all have really opened my eyes on a lot of issues in my family. I apologize for only replying to a few comments. There's just so many of you. Big shout out to all the people who gave compliments to Angel. I showed him this post last night and he thanks you all. I've been showing him lots of love because he really is an angel. And to the people calling this fake, AI, cliche and whatnot. I hate to break it to you all, but this is just my life. It sounds cliche because this is the sort of all too real thing that happens to many people in the community. Just move along if you want to say that stuff, because you're honestly just wasting your time. One of two things I would also like to address is people questioning me about thinking I could possibly be the AH in this situation, and all I can say is that when you have a mass of people telling you you're wrong for what you did, it's hard to not maybe believe them just a little bit, no matter how absurd it is. Second thing, for people wondering how no one in the family knew I was gay, I really was never am not close with my extended family, as they all live in different provinces, and my immediate family never traveled. We really just send each other holiday and birthday messages and have brief conversations whenever those are sent, and I just never had the urge to come out to them. Anyways, on to the update. I decided I didn't want to let this sit for any longer. I took a day off work, and I added my parents, Brick, and all the family that messaged and called me into one big group chat, per one advice I saw here. I laid out everything that went down to them, in case they were told a different story by my parents and brother. I told them that I was going NC with my parents and Brick no matter what, And if they didn't apologize and realize what they did wrong, or I cut them off too. I turned my phone off and continued on without it for the rest of the day. Once I turned my phone on again, I had lots of messages from them. My parents were outraged, and Brick said nothing. Some of my extended family apologized and told me that my parents just told them I was mean to Brick about some of his wedding plan choices, which got me uninvited. Still trying to wrap my head around how stupid that is. Seriously think my parents might be Neanderthals. Anyways, the real story made others even more angry and more insistent that I apologize, and they were promptly blocked. I didn't answer any of my parents' texts, calls, and blocked them. I feel like I have a weight off my shoulders. I'm not concerned about my parents showing up at our apartment, as they moved away from my city last year. Me and Angel are planning a lovely trip, per advice of a lot of people that we thought was great, to France to visit his family during when the wedding will be taking place, which I'm very excited for. I've heard nothing but good things about them. This will most likely be my only update on this post, and I thank you all for your support. My sister sabotaged my wedding. And now, with her struggles to conceive, my parents want her to share my baby. As a little background, my sister Pam, 30F, persuaded our parents and a few of our family members not to come to my wedding. She believed it was inappropriate for me to marry her while she was divorcing. She turned to lying and spreading rumors to get people to avoid me because the truth alone wasn't enough to make them hate me. My spouse and I recently shared on social media that I am currently in my second trimester of pregnancy. I am 27F. My parents and Pam learned about it in this way, and after we had not spoken for over 3 years, they tried to mend things with me. Why? Pam is sadly unable to conceive due to her infertility. Despite the fact that she has failed multiple IVF cycles, she is adamant about trying again. Pam does not believe that surrogacy or adoption are the best options for her at this time. Since I'm expecting a child, my parents thought it would be beneficial to make amends with Pam so she could spend time with a child who is not directly linked to her. They even proposed that the child have 2 mothers, saying that this would benefit me because I would receive more assistance. My parents really only want to pretend to be a happy family, now that Pam is unable to have children of her own. During the call, I was able to see through their phony politeness. I informed them that I would not accept this idea and that it was completely irrational to expect me to comply. To be honest, it was ridiculous that they even believed I would think about letting Pam act as the mother of my future child. I clarified that they shouldn't have done it because I was expecting a baby and they wanted to give Pam a plaything, but rather because they truly loved me and were sorry for how they treated me. They took issue at what I said, claiming that Pam was prepared to volunteer for her future niece or nephew and that they were just providing assistance because they knew I would require assistance when the kid was born. They said I was being too harsh and that it was all perfectly innocent. I replied that my husband and in-laws were already providing me with all the assistance I required because I was the mother. They should keep avoiding me in the future if it was easy for them to do so in the past. Here's where I might have gone too far. I suggested that Pam might not be able to conceive because she was a horrible person and wouldn't be a good mother. My parents, a few family members, and of course Pam herself sent me a ton of texts after that call. They all demand that I should apologize to them, claiming that what I said was needless and unkind. I shouldn't kick people when they're already down, they say. The issue is that I can still clearly recall every event leading up to my wedding, and I harbor deep animosity toward Pam for her actions. I find it hard to feel bad about what I said. To put things in perspective, while I was organizing my wedding, Pam had already been married for 2 years. Prior to their marriage, she and her ex-husband had been dating for 3 years, and she had always understood his desire to live a childless life. When they began talking about their future after a year of dating, it was among the first things she brought up to our parents. Even though I was in the room at the time, they continued their chat as usual, acting as though I wasn't there. Another problem is that even as a child, Pam and I have never gotten along. She has always been the beloved daughter of our parents. When we were younger, we used to quarrel a lot, but eventually we just learned to ignore one another. She therefore knew for a fact that she wanted children in the future, even if she was telling our parents that her ex-boyfriend preferred a childless existence. In the end, they agreed to bring up the subject again when they were married, and she hoped that by then, he would have changed his mind. She tried to persuade him to have children, but he refused to change his views, and they started fighting a lot. She would frequently look very distraught at family gatherings and tell about how hard it was to stay with him all the time. Her decision to wed a man who had made it apparent that he didn't want children was, in my opinion, her fault. It was she who thought she could make him reconsider. However, she had no right to hold him responsible when she was unable to. Naturally, I kept all of this to myself since I knew it would just cause more problems. I tried to persuade him for a few months before my parents informed me that Pam had returned to live with them permanently following a heated argument with her husband. They told me there was no way out of it at this point. My spouse and I had just begun making deposits for our wedding at this point. After almost 4 years of dating, we had been engaged for a few months. We had waited until we were both comfortable in our employment, even though we had been prepared for marriage for a while. My parents therefore told me that they wanted me to put off my wedding forever when they told me that Pam and her husband were going to divorce. They didn't want me to marry Pam at the same time she was divorcing in order to offend her. They said that Pam already had it difficult because she had to postpone her intentions to have a baby. They said that I should not forward with my wedding in order to spare her feelings because she truly wanted to become a mother. It was likely the most ridiculous and inconsiderate thing they had ever tried to get me to do. I informed them, of course, that I would not delay my wedding for Pam. Whether she liked it or not, I was going to marry. Since we were never close, I didn't care what she thought about my wedding. But my choice did not sit well with my parents. They were upset because I wasn't prepared to put their beloved daughter's sentiments ahead of my own wedding arrangements. They warned me that they wouldn't go if I didn't postpone the wedding. I knew my parents had a soft place for Pam, but I never imagined they would go to such lengths for her, so that was incredibly upsetting and devastating to me. Nevertheless, I accepted it and informed them that they may do as they pleased. Pam wasn't content, even though it should have been the end of it. She didn't like that I was getting married, so she made sure the rest of the family didn't come either. She initially only tried to win people over by saying that it was rude of me to get married while she was going through such a difficult period. Although the majority expressed sympathy for her, they did not specifically state that they would not attend my wedding. She made the decision to step it up after realizing this. She began spreading stories about me because the truth wasn't contentious enough. Pam started claiming that I had been persuading her husband to divorce her because I was envious of her and couldn't bear the idea of her having a child before me. I had never been friends with her spouse, so the allegations were ridiculous. If he and I had ever gotten close, I genuinely doubt Pam would have married him at all. People began to believe her, though, for some reason. She even claimed that I had been bothering her by convincing her spouse that he would be happier without her and manipulating him to leave her. Pam claims that I was to blame for his lack of desire for children since I had reportedly persuaded him that having no children was the way to go for our generation. All of it was false. I assume she lied so firmly that others started to believe her, even though I hadn't really engaged with my brother-in-law when he was married to Pam. Many folks turned down my wedding invites. A couple of my supportive cousins and other family members told me about Pam's comments, so I already knew why. I wasn't shocked to learn that no one provided me with a detailed explanation for their refusal. Only a few relatives and a few individuals from my side of the family came to my wedding. Everyone else was either a friend or a co-worker. On the bride's side, the attendance was dreadfully poor. In the weeks before the wedding, I recall being really furious about all of this. Many individuals had already made up their minds, and some had even blocked me, but I knew I could try talking to them and being honest. I didn't bother because it would have been my word against hers. Fortunately, my spouse, friends, and in-laws were there to support me on the wedding day. I barely noticed that so many of my family members weren't present because they made sure I had so much fun. I haven't forgiven Pam for what she did though, simply because I had a good time on my wedding day. She was vengeful and vicious in what she did. She made sure I wasn't happy just because she didn't get her way, which was quite typical of her. She had been like way since she was a child, but most people get over those habits, especially by the time they are in their late 20s. Regretfully, I am unable to say the same for her. I cut her and my parents off entirely after that incident, and my animosity toward them only deepened. I saw Pam's ex-husband for the first time since their divorce around a year later. One day while my husband and I were out to lunch, we noticed him eating with some of his coworkers. We weren't expecting him to greet us, so it was a little awkward, but he approached our table, congratulated us on our wedding, and expressed regret for not being there. He clarified that it was because of my sister's predicament. We were also courteous because he was chit-chatting, and my husband even made a joke about how he might as well have come because Pam didn't show up. Pam's ex-husband then appeared truly perplexed. At that point, we began discussing the events leading up to the wedding. He revealed how Pam had repeatedly postponed the mediation sessions and postponed the divorce by claiming she was too preoccupied with getting ready for my wedding. When her ex-husband learned she hadn't even gone, he became perplexed. Her sudden interest in my wedding had surprised him, but he had refrained from confronting her because he didn't want to accuse her of postponing the divorce out of fear. He just dealt with everything as calmly as he could. We discussed the facts after he gave us his version of events, which included Pam's failure to attend the wedding, her spreading false information about me, and her accusation that I was attempting to end her marriage. After expressing his shock that Pam would act in such a manner, he revealed the true cause of their split. It was a far deeper issue than a dispute over having kids. After months of arguments about whether or not to have children, her ex-husband finally began to take her point of view into consideration and was on the verge of changing his mind. She told him something that made all the difference the day he made the decision to talk to her about it. She appeared ecstatic when he informed her that he was at last prepared to think about being a parent. Then, in what she believed to be a jest, she said that he would have had to accept it sooner rather than later, even if he hadn't been prepared. She acknowledged that she had surreptitiously stopped taking her birth control pills without notifying him when he asked her to explain. She might have gotten pregnant if they had kept going that way, making plans for him to simply deal with it. He was unable to accept this perverse scheme. She had deceived us into believing that their disagreements were solely about having children, but in reality, their most recent dispute had been about her treachery. Pam made an effort to make it seem lighthearted, but it didn't make her actions any less serious. In essence, she was attempting to trick him into becoming pregnant so that he would be forced to accept the pregnancy at any time. My husband and I were more clearer on why she had behaved so erratically around the time of our wedding after that talk with her ex-husband. She was aware that she was to blame for her divorce. She could have kept it to herself and none of this would have occurred, even if she had taken the risky decision to stop taking her birth control. She may have even given birth to a child with her spouse, but she ruined everything for herself before venting her frustration on me. I became much more resentful of her after discovering all of this. I had the option of telling my parents and other family members the truth, but I decided against it. I had already severed my connections with people who hadn't been at my wedding by that point, and to be honest, I just wanted to get on with my life. I made the decision to remain silent and continue. But to be honest, I don't feel bad about what I said because I hate her so much. I genuinely think it's fortunate that she hasn't been able to have children because I don't think someone with her personality could be a decent mother. The fact that she and my parents only contacted me because I am pregnant and they wish to play happy family with my unborn child further bothers me. That simply will not occur. Regarding the notion of my child having two mothers, I concur with my in-laws and my spouse that it is not essential. People's reactions to my comment, especially those with whom I get along, are the only reason I'm even slightly unsure. So am I the jerk for suggesting that my sister might not make a good mother, which is why she hasn't been able to conceive? In response to inquiries, Pam has not remarried and, to the best of my knowledge, is not currently seeing anyone. Although I don't know much about her personal life, I've learned from friends and family that she is totally unmarried and that her primary goal at the moment is to have children. You can guess why she isn't interested in adopting a child or using a surrogate. In my opinion, it's because she feels that a child isn't truly your child unless you've given birth to it yourself. She has been trying for over 3 years, including when she tried to conceive with her spouse and when she used donors for IVF following the divorce. So far, nothing has worked for her. Most people would think about other choices by now, but she isn't interested, and that's her decision. The fact that she and my parents only tried to reconcile after I revealed my pregnancy is what truly seems odd. The remark about two mothers stuck with me. Additionally, you all observed that they made particular reference to the fact that this baby would be linked to her by blood. Technically speaking, my child would be her blood relative because she is my biological sister. However, bringing it up while trying to make amends is odd, and their actions simply gave off a disturbing, almost baby stealer atmosphere. I'm afraid she'll start projecting and acting like the mother if I do try to forgive her and give her some contact with my child. I can't allow that to occur. Some of you have questioned why I haven't defended myself in front of the rest of the family or spoken out about the true cause of her divorce. In all honesty, I don't believe it's worth it. I became aware of my true friends and supporters after the wedding. Everything that transpired deeply wounded me, and even though I wanted to speak out about the truth, I decided against it. I wanted to be left alone. Even a few family members with whom I get along well said that I was a little callous when I told Pam that she couldn't have children. Although they don't expect me to apologize, they do believe it was a little too severe. These folks have always stood behind me, so that's why I'm worried. If they too think I was too severe, then maybe I should be worried. Update 1. I appreciate all of the comments left on my post. I appreciate your support, even though it seems like most of you believe I'm NTA. I will continue to ignore Pam and my parents, and I have made the decision not to apologize to them. They are obviously unhappy about this. On social media and in real life, they are acting like the victim and disparaging me in front of our family members once more. I already don't talk to those people, so I'm not bothered by it. What could possibly go wrong? That they will further isolate me. I made the decision to talk to my family members that support me yet disagree with my remark and address it. Almost everyone in the family is aware of what happened and what I said, and Pam and my parents have made a big issue out of it. I reached out to people who truly care about me since I won't engage with someone I don't get along with. I admitted to them that, in the heat of the moment, I had uttered those things. However, that doesn't change the fact that Pam's deliberate attempt to draw attention to herself during my wedding was much worse. For years, Pam has been mean and disrespectful to me, and I won't say I'm sorry for something that might even be true. She won't be significantly impacted by my remark, at least not in the same manner that she did me when she created rumors. Because of what she said, my family declined to come to my wedding. It's not the same thing because my viewpoint won't stop her from being pregnant. Those who were on my side are still supportive, and my relatives seem to understand this. I'm okay with them deciding not to talk about it anymore. All I want is for my pregnancy to be a joyful and healthy one. I hope this tension between Pam and my parents ends quickly. I don't want them to stretch this out because I might have to tell them some things they won't like. This is something I really don't want to deal with, especially now that I'm expecting. Update 2. My parents have been playing the victim and informing everyone in the family about what I said for the past 2 weeks since I last spoke to them on the phone. They have been pleading with others to avoid me, to never communicate with me again, and even to cut me off from family members that get along well with me. They basically want me shunned by the entire family. My parents haven't been successful in their strategy though, because as I indicated, I was able to work things out with the people I care about. They obviously didn't like it, so they posted disparaging remarks about me on social media. I am aware that the posts are about me even if they haven't specifically mentioned me. They have been discussing a particular relative who has always tried to ruin lives, and always been jealous of Pam. That's why I allegedly made fun of her infertility, they say. I knew it was all lies, so at first I didn't care. But it really got to me when they recently posted that I was the one who destroyed Pam's marriage. I chose to reply since they were repeating the same falsehoods they had told me around the time of my wedding. I made contact with my former brother-in-law. Even if we don't communicate frequently, we are on speaking terms because we still greet one another on holidays and on our birthdays. I told him everything that had been going on and asked if he would mind if I told the truth in public. I did what he told me to do. The drama has escalated since I wrote about Pam's actions and the true cause of their divorce. Although I haven't spoken to anyone directly, family members have been calling, texting, and emailing me to ask whether it's true, to ask me to remove the post, and even to accuse me of lying about Pam once more. None of them have received a response from me. My parents and Pam, on the other hand, have remained remarkably silent, which suggests that they have little to defend themselves. They'll find words though, I'm sure. Even after all of this, it's disheartening that no one in the family has bothered to apologize to me, but it's okay since it's exactly what I anticipated. I believe I've been successful in exposing Pam for who she truly is, which was my major objective. I'm just going to relax and observe what happens next. Update 3. Pam and my parents finally contacted me a few days after my last post, stating that they were prepared to apologize. But only if I consented to have my post removed. The rest of the family hasn't expressed regret to me, but they seem to have contacted my parents and Pam to criticize their actions. They told my parents that it was unfair to portray me negatively when Pam was ultimately to blame for her divorce. My relationships with my parents have suffered greatly as a result of their years of deceiving the family. It's amazing how fast certain family members went from detesting me to betraying Pam. However, as I already stated, I don't hold it in high regard for those who assumed that I was the cause of Pam's marital issues. They're now equally eager to assume that she was at fault from the beginning. They still refuse to say sorry, and the majority of them have ceased getting in touch with me. No one is requesting me to remove the post, and no one is interested in knowing if I was speaking the truth. I replied to Pam and my parents that I would wait to remove the post until I felt like it. I don't care about their apologies anymore. I responded to their email correspondence and subsequently blocked them. They haven't made an attempt to get in touch with me since, but this morning I made the decision to remove the post, not for them, but rather because I don't want my social media accounts to be overflowing with posts about unimportant people. Retaliation isn't beneficial, and as I mentioned, I want a pleasant and healthy pregnancy journey. Furthermore, I believe that's sufficient punishment for Pam and my parents because they are who they are. I have family and friends who truly care about me, and my spouse and I are content. I really only need that. It doesn't really matter what my sister and parents are doing these days. I hope they understand after everything that has transpired that I don't want to interact with them ever again and avoid me. That's all I have to say, and considering everything that has happened, I doubt they will get in touch anytime soon. I'm grateful to everyone who has helped me, answered my messages and given me guidance. It is really important to me. My husband just uncovered secrets from my past, and now I'm terrified our marriage might be over. Original post. I'll try and keep this short. We've known each other for 5 years, been married for 2 years, and up until last weekend things were perfectly fine. Maybe once in a while we'd bicker about money or something, but 99% of the time we were happy together. While out last weekend for a friend's birthday, a now ex-friend of mine told my husband about a relationship I had in college. My husband knew about my college boyfriend, but obviously I didn't share intimate details about our sex life. Well, it came out that I used to engage in threesomes with him and his male roommate. Probably 12, 15 in total, but all my husband knows is that it was more than once. College was a totally different time in my life. I was drinking every weekend, doing recreational drugs every month, partying, having casual flings, just like everyone else at that age. It was a hedonistic live for today lifestyle that I thankfully grew out of. I look back on those years with a lot of regrets, and not just about my sex life. I mean, it was 10 plus years ago. I'm a totally different person now. Regardless, I know my husband sees me in a totally different light. He hasn't slept in our bed since he found out, and he's barely spoken to me all week. I'm so scared he'll divorce me. I'm walking on eggshells just trying to stay out of his way while he works through this. I really want to sit him down and clear the air, I just don't know where to begin. I feel like one slip of the tongue and our relationship could be completely over. I know I'm not a good person for keeping this from him, so please don't lecture me. It was a chapter of my life I'd thought I'd closed for good. It was my one secret, and I honestly debated telling him about it but came to the conclusion that no positive outcome could come from it. TLDR, my husband, SM34 of 2 years found out some of my F31 sexual exploits in college. He has barely talked to me since he found out, and I'm afraid our relationship might be finished over something I did 10 years ago before I even knew him. Relevant comments. Commenter. People don't change that much. It could be that he just simply knows more about how you view sex now, and it may not be compatible with his own views. Pulling a three-way with 2 dudes, 10, 15 times? That's a whole lot of sucking and fucking. It shows a lot about how you like to be treated and what you crave. I honestly don't blame him for being creeped out about that. OOP, most times there was drugs or alcohol involved. It's not something I'd ever want to do at this age. Like I said, it was a lifetime ago. Puch 80. Is your husband upset that you used to be sexually adventurous because he has a moral problem with it? Or is it because you are not sexually adventurous with him? And I don't just mean having threesomes. I mean fun, passionate sex. OOP, he's never complained about our sex life. I didn't want to go into explicit detail, but people are asking and it's an anonymous account, so here it goes. My main limitation is that I won't do anal, which I know he enjoys. It's just not pleasurable and often painful for me. I don't like him coming on my face. Body is fine, in me is fine. And, not that he's ever asked, I'm done with group sex for good. Deleted. Honestly, I don't think you've done anything wrong, and if this, something that occurred when he wasn't in your life whatsoever, is a deal breaker for him, then you're better off. He's being a childish idiot about it. The past was meant to stay in the past, and I don't believe you were obligated to talk to him about your sexual exploits with previous partners. The way he is acting is ridiculous. I understand he may be bothered by it, but wow, handle it like a man, dude. OOP, I'm not better off without him. This is the man I love, we've built a life together. A divorce would completely ruin my life. How did her husband find out the information? He was talking to an old friend of mine on a night where we were all drinking. My friend claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue, but she has a history of pulling shit like this. I'm 100% done with her, I no longer consider her a friend. OOP added, no, I came to Reddit because I'm looking to save my marriage and don't want to discuss this with friends, family. Update, as of this morning, we still hadn't slept in the same bed or spoken more than 10 words to each other in passing. As I was waking up, he was walking in the front door with 2 coffees. He sat me down at our kitchen table and finally opened up to me. Basically, he feels that he was conned, his word, into the marriage, saying that he wouldn't have even dated me, let alone married me, if he'd known what he knows now. His view of me has been irreparably changed and he no longer sees me as someone worthy of being his wife. Quoting him here, loving prick. Beyond the sexual aspect, he says he no longer trusts me because I kept something this big from him our whole relationship. Nothing I could do or say could convince him that these were past mistakes and not reflective of who I am today. He wasn't angry with me, didn't call me a slut or anything like that. Never once raised his voice. Part of me wishes he did, although I can't exactly say why right now. It felt like I was being laid off from a job. So that's it. We are getting divorced. My supposed life partner turned his back on me without a second thought. He didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me first. Apparently he visited his lawyer during the week and the process is in motion. His words. Knowing him, there is absolutely no changing his mind. My husband owns multiple businesses and wouldn't get married without a prenup. I signed it, honest to God, thinking we'd never, ever have to use it. Well, he had the loving document with him this morning. He said he'd pay off the remainder of my student loans, which he isn't legally obligated to do. While I appreciate that, I am going to meet with my lawyer this week and see if the agreement can be challenged in court. We have built a life together. I gave him 5 of the best years of my life and I've been 100% faithful to him. I don't deserve to be tossed out like a piece of trash. So that's it. My life turned upside down in the span of a week, over something I did 10+ years ago before I even knew him. It's loving asinine. The thing is, even as I wrote the original post, in the back of my mind I knew he was through with me. He's ended friendships and business partnerships over less. TLDR, my husband finally spoke to me and is apparently proceeding with a divorce. Relevant comments. Deleted 1. I'm curious, why are you looking to challenge the prenup in court? Do you feel that you have a right to his assets or money from his businesses, or are you just being a vengeful person? Were you an investor or founding member of any of these projects with him? Were you instrumental in their development and success in any material way? Don't give me this emotional support crap. The whole time you were supposedly emotionally supporting him, he was using the proceeds from his businesses to provide for you. That's the deal in a marriage. Now that the marriage is ending, the monetary support from his businesses is going to be cut off from you. He's being generous by offering to pay off your loans. It sounds like you're just being a spiteful bitch looking to suck as much of his money as the legal system will allow. Deleted 2. It's within her rights to contest it and the courts will decide whether she has a case or not. OOP exactly. What do I have to lose? To protect his fragile ego, I have to start my life over at square one. I'll probably have to move in with my parents. I don't even know if I'll have a car by summer. I get why he's mad. I totally get it. He just didn't even give us a chance. He doesn't know our relationship won't work out. He didn't even try. He ran straight to his lawyer and exercised a contingency agreement without even talking to me. He's taking the coward's way out and it destroys my life in the process. Macaroni and milk. I seriously don't know what the fuck is going on in this thread where the devoted comments are about how it's all on you because you're a fucking liar. This is the same subreddit that will tell most posters that their sexual past is no one else's business, barring diseases or sex work. Maybe these people only read your update and assumed you hid both of those from him. I don't know. Either way, you did nothing wrong. If your sexual past was such a big deal for him, he should have asked you some questions, not just assumed you were some pure little angel living in a bubble just waiting for this one specific man to come whisk you away. If having a sexual past is a deal breaker and he didn't question you, that's on him. Not you. Lawyer up, make the split, and go find some guy who won't judge you for actions that happened 15 years ago and have no bearing on him whatsoever. OOP never said I was a virgin. We met when I was like 25, come on. Anytime I mentioned an ex-boyfriend, not sexually, just in conversation, like, oh, I went to destination with ex-boyfriend, he'd get pissy and unhappy. He never came out and said it, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So early on in our relationship, I made the conscious decision to stop talking about my past boyfriends completely. Caught my wife smiling as her lover grabbed her ass. I filed for divorce, and now she's begging for forgiveness. My spouse, 30F and I 32M, recently got back from an extended camping trip with 2 other couples who have been friends for years. We had a terrific visit, but I still can't get over what happened the morning we departed. As we prepared to return home, we were all packed. I noticed my wife and my friend when I looked up from loading our car. They were a few feet distant from the campsite. I watched as he reached out and squeezed her hip while slipping his hand down her ass while she was stooping to pick something up. My wife pushed his hand away swiftly, but she didn't seem furious. Instead, she was grinning at him in a way that was almost amusing. I felt as though I had been punched in the stomach, but it all happened so quickly, maybe a second or two. I looked about, but it didn't appear to be observed by anyone else. The second couple was farther away, talking about the travel back, while his wife was busy packing up their car. It was a calm drive home. My wife attempted to strike up a discussion, but I was unable to concentrate since I kept thinking about that event. I pretended that I was just thinking about work when she questioned why I was so silent. To tell the truth, I was stunned. I was reluctant to mention it. She could try to convince me that I was being crazy or that I was just having hallucinations if I brought it up. I had the impression that I was going through the rest of the day automatically. I can scarcely concentrate at work today because I didn't get much sleep last night. Every aspect is being questioned by my rushing thoughts. Everything seemed in order, and aside from what I witnessed, the remainder of the vacation was fantastic. I'm unsure if I understood the scenario correctly. However, the smile on her face seemed too casual and welcoming for something that went too far. I adore my wife dearly. Since our first year of college together, I have never had any cause to question her. Even though she is my best friend, I'm having trouble untangling a knot in my stomach for the first time. I've always had great faith in her and have never been the kind to pry. However, as I sit here, I'm debating whether or not to check her phone. Even if I wanted to, I'm not sure how I could accomplish it without her figuring it out because it's password protected. I know I have to take action because this is getting to me. Is it foolish of me to look through her phone? And how could I if it's password secured, even if I wanted to? Update 1, I located her iPad. Since there was no password, I was able to log in, and her phone is still linked to it. She's using Telegram. There, they have been conversing. She is cheating, but I'm still reading through the messages. I'm attempting to maintain my composure so that I can make the right decision going forward without ruining this. How should I proceed? When she gets home, should I confront her? Should I confront him at his home? Please assist. Update 2. I appreciate all of your advice. I kept it a secret from her. I've sequestered myself in my home office, claiming that I have work to catch up on. She is not a suspect. The iPad stayed with me. She won't even realize it's gone because she hasn't used it in a long time. As an additional precaution, I used my phone to take screenshots of every message they sent. As far as I can tell, they have been communicating for at least 8 months. Their primary means of contact is Telegram. After splitting from me and his wife, they appear to have exchanged explicit communications and even planned to formally announce their relationship. It's unbelievable that she would harm me in this way. She even texted him a suggestive picture of herself earlier this evening while she was heading to the gym, based on the communications I read. She wanted to be intimate and began kissing me as soon as she got home. I declined, stating that I had some work to do. I'll take the advice I've been given here and get some evidence because I'm confused and unable to think clearly right now. I'll go to work on those actions. Additionally, I've noticed a number of comments suggesting that I keep my money apart from hers. We have joint bank accounts and co-own the apartment where we reside. She is aware that I had a sizable legacy from my parents, who passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. Even if she doesn't have access to that money, is there anything I can do to safeguard it in case something goes wrong? Fortunately, we are not yet parents. Update 3. Since I occasionally work from home and had no meetings this morning, I used the time to look up and call attorneys. Although most couldn't schedule me until next week, I have 2 consultations scheduled for tomorrow. As soon as I get a lawyer and get myself covered legally, I will tell his wife and present her the evidence. Before I determine what to do next, like addressing my wife, I'll allow her time to organize her affairs and, if she so desires, hire a lawyer. I have no idea why I'm feeling this way. For some reason, I'm more numb than outraged. The messages, particularly the explicit ones, make me feel ill and queasy. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, even though I'm only doing what I have to do at the moment. I'm not sure how long I can maintain this poker look before she realizes something's wrong. I appreciate all of your support and messages. Update 4, I appreciate all of the advice you have given me. I have been keeping myself occupied with work and going to the gym, so not much has happened since yesterday. My wife is aware that the anniversary of my parents' deaths is approaching in approximately 1 month. I simply said that I was thinking about them when she questioned why I appeared aloof. A handful of my scheduled lawyer consultations are today, but the majority are scheduled for next week. After I choose a lawyer and am aware of my options, I will provide another update. Final update. My divorce papers were filed this morning after I found a great lawyer who was able to draft them in a matter of days. Since I reside in a no-fault jurisdiction, none of the adultery evidence I collected will be utilized in court. The good news is that since I didn't spend my fortune on married expenditures, it's safe. One of us will have to buy the other out, or we will both have to sell our condo, which was a wedding present with equal down payments from both sets of parents. I gave my ex-friend's wife a ring on Saturday and invited her over for coffee. Ironically, her husband and my wife had taken an overnight excursion together, which is why I picked this day. Through their texts on the iPad, I learned that my wife had informed me that she would be spending the weekend at her sister's house to assist with the children while her sister's husband was away on business. Meanwhile, her spouse said he was gone on a project for work. In actuality, My wife's spouse was paying for their hotel stay while they were traveling out of town together. I showed his wife the telegram pictures and messages. She informed me that a few months prior, she had observed that he was being aloof, but she had never believed that he was cheating and had dismissed it as work-related stress. She was devastated to learn that her husband was having an affair with my wife, who is also her friend. I provided her my lawyer's contact information in case she wanted it throughout our lengthy conversation. She's thinking about her choices. Sunday evening. After visiting her sister's house, my wife came home. Just after spending the weekend with her lover, she came in the door, kissed me and said she missed me. She has nearly demonic compartmentalization skills. We needed to chat, so I sat her down. We live in a one-party consent state, so I did as my lawyer advised and taped the entire conversation. It proceeded like this. I begged her to swear to tell the truth to me. Despite her apparent nervousness, she answered, "Of course, baby." I then posed a number of queries, including, "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Are you satisfied with me?" "Yes, darling, of course." "Have I treated you well as a husband? Do I treat you fairly?" "Yes and yes." "So why are you betraying me?" After a whole minute of staring at me in disbelief, she started to dispute it. After some time passed, I advised her to stop acting as I already knew the truth. On a night out with her partner a few months back, she finally broke down and confessed to kissing a man who had been making advances on her at a pub. I'm not sure why, but the whole thing was so ridiculous that I started giggling at this point. She had cheated on him more than once. She had done it whenever she could. I questioned her about whether or not she had cheated before. She vowed fervently that it was the only occasion, that it was a sign of weakness, that she was intoxicated, and that it had no significance. I told her I had filed for divorce, but I remained silent and gave her my lawyer's business card. I wanted to speak with her once to see whether there was anything worth preserving about our marriage, so I hadn't filed yet. I instructed her to call my lawyer if she wanted to get in touch with me. After crying, pleading, and apologizing, she started gaslighting me by claiming that I was discarding everything we owned because of a single error as I was packing a suitcase. Her statement that you have no one else in the world was the worst. Why would you abandon your lone surviving family? I informed her that she was the only family member I had left after my parents passed away and that I could rely on no one else, thus it hurt that she responded negatively. That evening, I departed for a motel, where I will remain until I locate a new flat. I formally filed for divorce yesterday. Edit. I kept my knowledge of my ex-friend's affair from her. I said nothing about the other affair when she confessed to kissing a stranger at the pub. After confronting him, my ex-friend's wife called my wife and yelled at her. I don't blame his wife for being upset when I spoke with her. She had been traveling out of town to visit her ailing mother, but her husband took advantage of the opportunity to spend time with my wife rather than providing for her. I was caught off guard when my wife confessed to kissing a stranger, so I kept the affair a secret. It might not seem like much in comparison to the double life she was living with my friend, but it was shocking to me at the time when I discovered how much she wanted to cheat on me. I simply went since I was too furious to speak to her without losing my temper. Leaving made more sense than trying to figure out why she had been having an affair with my former friend. She continued to call and leave messages that night after I left the house. My ex-friend's wife ceased attempting to contact me after she phoned her the following day and addressed her husband as well. Both she and he have been completely silent ever since. I connected the dots because I stopped getting calls from my ex-friend's wife completely around the time she messaged me to tell me she had confronted him and phoned my wife. My sister invited my abusive ex to my wedding to sabotage it. I exposed her infidelity to her boyfriend, and she lost everything. Hello Reddit. I, 32F, never imagined that I would be blogging here, but I feel the need to vent after everything that has transpired. I know the title sounds harsh, but bear with me. It will take a while to read this. I've always considered my family to be very typical. I'm the eldest of two sisters. Although they weren't severe, our parents instilled strong values in us and worked hard to provide us with a wonderful existence. When we were younger, my sister Catherine, 28F, and I were close, but during her adolescence, things began to change. She started to seek attention more and somehow kept getting into problems. Her problems, failing classes, sneaking out, and lying about where she was going, took up a lot of my parents' time. I, on the other hand, was consistent in my grades, complied with regulations, and never caused trouble. The tendency persisted after college. While Catherine changed employment frequently, never remaining for more than 8 or 9 months at one place, I was able to secure a steady work. She would get dismissed for a variety of reasons or quit because the atmosphere was toxic. Our parents continued to support her financially by paying her vehicle payments and rent when she was unable to. I also made an effort to assist by setting up 2 interviews for her at my company, but she was late for the first one and failed to show up for the second. 3 years ago, during my friend Lisa's 30th birthday celebration, I met my husband, Tyler. He worked with Lisa, and as soon as we spoke, everything made sense. He's thoughtful, steady, funny, and pretty much everything I've been searching for. I first became aware of Catherine's strange conduct during our year-long courtship before we moved in together. She would always arrive at our house without warning when she knew Tyler would be home. She wouldn't be able to visit if Tyler was working late. She began asking me strange questions about our relationship, such as if we had ever argued, whether I believed he was truly dedicated, and whether I was concerned about the 2-year age difference. I initially believed that she was merely protecting me or perhaps feeling envious that I was seeing her less. Since Brett, my ex, is significant to this narrative, I should bring him up here. In my mid-20s, Brett and I dated for 2 years. After a wonderful beginning, he gradually started to exert control over the relationship. He would arrive at work without warning, check my phone while I was asleep, and become upset if I went out with friends without him. He kept me apart from everyone but my family. And dispute about my messaging a male coworker about work was the last straw. He shoved me up against a wall and said that if I ever disrespected him again, it would get worse. That evening, I went to live with my parents and obtained a restraining order. Catherine even assisted me in moving my belongings out of his house, so the entire family is aware of what transpired. Tyler popped the question on a beach vacation last year. I was ecstatic, and it was ideal. I was too thrilled to notice Catherine's strange silence when we made the announcement at family supper. When I brought up wedding preparations, she became excited and virtually pleaded for my assistance. I was apprehensive because of her history of not completing tasks, but she appeared very excited and assured me that she would take it seriously. I persuaded Tyler to give her a try despite his skepticism. A huge error. The issues began modestly. Despite forgetting to relay vendor messages and scheduling conflicts, she always had an excuse and would make the necessary corrections just in time to appear as though she had saved the day. Then more serious problems began to arise. Although I had sent the money to Catherine weeks prior, the venue asserted that they never got our payment. Although Catherine insisted she had handled it, the florist canceled since final selections were never confirmed. We required food for 150 guests, but the caterer only had enough for 50. Every time something went wrong, Catherine would seem heartbroken and somehow repair it at the last minute, making herself appear heroic while I became angry with myself for having any doubts about her. I stood up for Catherine even though Tyler proposed that we handle the planning ourselves. She was my sister, and I believed she was genuinely attempting to assist. I saw her browsing Tyler's phone at our parents' place 2 weeks prior to the wedding. Tyler had left his phone charging in the kitchen while he was assisting Dad with something in the garage, and she had offered to help set up for Sunday dinner. She abruptly put down the phone when I entered, saying she was only attempting to show Mom some wedding pictures I had sent Tyler. It felt strange, but I ignored it because I had so many other wedding-related issues to handle. The wedding day got off to a fairly typical start. Everything appeared to be in order. All of the vendors arrived on time, the location looked stunning, and the flowers were just what I had requested. My bridesmaids and I were in the bridal room when I heard something outside. I glanced out before anyone could stop me and saw Brett and the security guys fighting. My heart stopped beating. I was making a big mistake, he was screaming, and he needed to talk to me. He was taken out by security, but I was shaken. How was the wedding even known to him? Since the restraining order ended 3 years ago, I hadn't spoken to him. My best friend Sarah, who has never been fond of Catherine, showed me something on her phone at that point. She was able to access her unlocked phone while Catherine was in the restroom after spotting her acting suspiciously. Brett and Catherine exchanged messages for weeks. She had informed him that I wasn't content with Tyler, emailed him all the wedding information, and persuaded him that I still harbored affections for him. She couldn't stand seeing me settle for the wrong man, so she vowed to help him win me back. However, things worsened. Sarah discovered correspondence between Catherine and Ryan, her boyfriend, in which Catherine expressed her affections for Tyler. She admitted that she had initially spotted him at Lisa's party but thought I had stolen him. In order to fully express her feelings to Tyler, she was attempting to call off the wedding. She even griped to Ryan about how unfair it was that while she was stuck with him, her plain older sister had landed such a great guy. Despite my devastation, I vowed not to let them spoil my day. Although it did not go as neatly as anticipated, the wedding did take place. Playing the role of the worried sister, Catherine pretended to be utterly surprised by Brett's appearance. When my parents learned what she had done, they were incensed, but we made the decision to handle it after the honeymoon. I showed Ryan everything when we returned, including Catherine's communications with Brett and her admissions regarding Tyler. Despite his pain, Ryan thanked me. At that point, he informed me of Catherine's questionable actions with her coworker, Mike. She and he had apparently been spending a lot of time together at work, going to lunch every day and messaging constantly. She consistently brushed off Ryan's worries, claiming that Ryan was being overly neurotic and that Mike was merely a buddy. That's what inspired me to seek retribution. Even though I may have gone too far, I don't regret it given what she did to me. Knowing that Catherine would be having her daily lunch meeting with Mike, I assisted Ryan in organizing a surprise visit to her place of employment. As they say, the rest is history. Update 1. Since I last posted, a lot has transpired. Yesterday's workplace altercation, which I assisted in organizing, was far more chaotic than I had anticipated. Ryan told me everything even though I wasn't there, and tidbits have also been coming in from other sources. Ryan did this by taking a day off from his own employment. For a week, he had been keeping tabs on Catherine's lunch habits. She consistently ate her meal with Mike, in his office with the door closed, and for precisely 75 minutes rather than the usual hour. Other staff members Ryan talked to said that this had been occurring for months. At precisely 12:45 p.m., when Catherine would undoubtedly be in Mike's office, he planned his visit. Ryan informed me that he nearly canceled at the last minute. He debated whether he truly wanted to know the truth for 15 minutes while he stood in the parking lot. He got the boost he needed though, when he recalled all the texts about Tyler and how Catherine believed she was settling for Ryan. Ryan was in without question after the office receptionist recognized him from company events. He headed to the third-floor office where Mike worked. He could see them sitting on Mike's desk chair together, heads hunched over Mike's phone, giggling about something, through the glass divider. Mike had Catherine virtually on his lap. Ryan claimed that they appeared to be a long-term couple who were totally at ease with one another. After a single knock, Ryan entered. He said that Catherine knocked over a cup of coffee when she leaped away from Mike. In a matter of seconds, her expression changed from shock to terror to rage. Given that Catherine had never brought up having a boyfriend, Mike simply appeared perplexed. She said that she couldn't wear rings while typing, which is why she had been wearing her promise ring from Ryan. Yes, they had exchanged promise rings 6 months prior, on a chain around her neck at work. Ryan gently made his way to Mike's desk rather than shouting or making a disturbance, as Catherine most likely anticipated. Printouts of Catherine's messages, including those about Tyler and her discussions with Brett about spoiling my wedding, were in a folder he put there. "She's all yours, yours," he murmured, turning to go after giving Mike a quick glance. Catherine began to panic at that point. She made a scene in the center of the office as she chased after Ryan and grabbed his arm. In tears, she said that she could explain everything and that it wasn't what it appeared to be. By now, a number of colleagues had emerged from their desks to observe the action. According to Ryan, other people were using their phones to record it. Those movies must be doing the rounds in the office right now. The higher authorities took notice of their argument. The department head and Catherine's immediate supervisor arrived to look into the disturbance. At this point, things truly took a turn for the worse. Catherine began disclosing inappropriate information in her haste to defend herself. She mentioned contacting Brett regarding my wedding during business hours. She mentioned using her business phone to make long-distance calls to him. She even acknowledged that she had printed wedding-related documents on the office printer. It seems that she had been printing wedding invitations for people using workplace resources as a type of side gig. With every admittance, the department head's expression seemed to harden. He called Et right away to retrieve her phone logs and print them out. They learned at that point that she had been making private international calls to a person in Europe, which was likely another secret she was maintaining. However, Ryan, who had had enough of being deceived, dropped the true bombshell. He told me something that made me feel sick. Catherine had arrived at the bar by coincidence the night before my wedding, at Tyler's bachelor party. One of Tyler's groomsmen, Ryan, was present. Catherine cornered Tyler outside the restroom and attempted to kiss him after the majority of others had gone. Catherine pleaded with Ryan not to tell me, but Tyler pushed her away right away and walked away. She sobbed, claimed to be intoxicated and disoriented, and vowed that it would never occur again. By threatening to destroy my wedding day if I found out, she coerced Ryan into remaining silent. I contacted Tyler as soon as Ryan told me about this section today. He stated he didn't inform me because he didn't want to start a commotion just before the wedding, but he did confirm everything. After we returned from the honeymoon, he intended to inform me. Tyler was attempting to keep me happy on my wedding day, therefore I'm not upset with him. However, I'm upset with Catherine for placing him in that situation. The consequences have been enormous. Catherine's supervisors are thoroughly auditing her computer usage and spending. Mike reportedly went to HR to defend himself, saying that despite his request to maintain professionalism, Catherine had been making inappropriate advances. Ryan's observations are totally at odds with this, but I suppose Mike is attempting to protect himself. Last night, Ryan left their shared flat. Until he can locate a new place, he is staying with friends. Everyone's phones have been blown up by Catherine, including Tyler's, Ryan's, our parents, and Trent's and mine. She alternates between acting like the victim and claiming that we all plotted to destroy her life. Our parents disagree about how to respond to this. Mom says I should have handled it privately as a family concern and believes I went too far by bringing up Catherine's place of employment. But Dad is really on my side. He asserts that rather than receiving another bailout, Catherine should finally experience the repercussions of her actions. I have no regrets about what I did. Perhaps I went too far, but she deserves everything that comes her way because of what she did to my wedding, attempted to do to my marriage, and has been doing to Ryan. This is only the beginning, according to what Ryan is telling me. The company audit will uncover much more than improper phone calls and mishandled office supplies. When I have more information, I'll update. Update 2. If it was conceivable, things with Catherine have become worse. When the audit results were released, they were much more detrimental than anyone had anticipated. The finding of systematic fraud resulted from an investigation into the misuse of business resources for wedding sabotage. Catherine had been submitting fictitious expense reports for non-existent customer appointments for the last 8 months. She made complex spreadsheets with fictitious phone numbers and email addresses that detailed encounters with possible clients. She even falsified the signatures on paperwork confirming the encounter. She falsely claimed more than $15,000 in reimbursements in total. The really heinous thing, though, is that she had set up a paper trail that implicated Jenny, her assistant. She had been gradually assembling evidence to blame Jenny for everything in the event that she was apprehended. There were documents stored on Jenny's drive, a phony confession letter saved as a draft, and suspicious emails written but not sent from Jenny's computer, which Catherine had access to because Jenny trusted her. All of this was discovered by the company's IT team while conducting their inquiry. The employer is filing charges against her in addition to terminating her. Catherine had designated me as her emergency contact rather than our parents, so yesterday the HR director gave me a call. He wanted to alert me to the fact that they would be filing a lawsuit. Their legal team is getting the documentation ready, and they have already called the police. The coworker she was becoming close to, Mike, has totally put her under the bus. He brought a thorough statement to HR alleging that Catherine had been pestering him sexually for months. He said that despite his repeated attempts to maintain professional boundaries, she had surrounded him in the break room, sent improper texts after work hours, and made unwanted physical contact. He even showed images of him requesting that she refrain from sending him late-night texts. I was shown a few of Catherine's most recent mails by Ryan. She has been sending him a ton of emails and texts, alternating between pleading with him to return and pointing the finger at everyone else for her troubles. In fact, she claimed, if my sister hadn't taken Tyler away from me, none of this would have occurred. She was aware that I was interested in him and that I had seen him first at that gathering, but she wanted to have him for herself since she has always been envious of me. These texts include terrifying delusions. She stated that Tyler was clearly settling for second best, with me, that they made meaningful eye contact at family dinners, and that he would particularly chuckle at her jokes. Even though Tyler hardly recalls speaking to her during family get-togethers, she seems to sincerely think that they had a relationship. However, my mother made the most startling discovery yesterday. She contacted me in tears and said she had something to tell me that she ought to have told me years ago. Catherine had apparently engaged in a similar activity during her high school years. She sought to quit their relationship after becoming fixated with her best friend Rachel's boyfriend. She wrote fictitious love letters from the boyfriend to herself, circulated false accusations that Rachel was cheating, and finally attempted to kiss him at a party. She told everyone that he had attempted to attack her after he turned her down. When the truth was finally revealed, Mom sent her to counseling, but it was obvious that this didn't make much of a difference. Mom holds herself responsible for not informing me of this situation sooner. She kept it private to preserve Catherine's reputation since she believed that the conduct had stopped after therapy and that it was only a passing phase. She now understands that she ought to have forewarned me when Catherine began displaying excessive interest in Tyler. Ryan is now staying with friends after moving all of his possessions out of their apartment. He met a female at his gym, and he has already begun dating her. Catherine had a total breakdown after learning about it from mutual acquaintances. They threatened to call the police after she arrived at his gym crying and making a disturbance. She even attempted to persuade our father to speak with Ryan, but he turned her down, telling her that, for the first time in her life, she would have to deal with the fallout from her actions. She had another tantrum as a result, accusing our parents of constantly favoring me and forcing her to compete for everything. I'm done with Catherine, even though I'm not sure what will happen with the legal accusations. It was all an act, the sister I believed I had never existed. I can't help but notice her true identity now that the mask has come off. Update 3, a month has passed since my previous post, and things have finally calmed down, though not in the manner Catherine likely had in mind. The business proceeded with pressing charges. She faces official charges of embezzlement and fraud. Her attorney suggested that she accept a plea agreement, which would probably spare her from going to jail but would require her to serve probation and pay full reparations. She suffered financially as a result of losing her work. Due to the charges appearing in background checks, she is unable to get a new job. Due to her 2-month rent arrears, her landlord slapped her with an eviction notice last week. When prospective employers contacted her former company for references, she attempted to conceal her current residence by applying for jobs using our parents' address. Ryan has moved on entirely. He is formally dating Sarah, a girl from his gym, and they appear to be happy together. She is nice and totally different from Catherine, who I met last week. She leads a pretty drama-free life and holds steady work as a kindergarten teacher. There is no greater glaring contrast with Catherine. When Jenny, Catherine's old assistant, contacted me on LinkedIn, it was a true surprise. She wanted to express her gratitude to me for unintentionally revealing Catherine's plots. Evidently, Catherine had been claiming credit for her work and quietly threatening her job security for months, making her workplace a living hell. The corporation is funding Jenny's further certifications, and she has been elevated to Catherine's previous role. After Catherine attempted to place the responsibility for everything on my parents, they are now all disappointed in her. When she arrived at their home last week, she yelled that they had destroyed her life by constantly comparing her to me and made her feel inferior. She claimed Dad was controlling because he wouldn't give her the money to hire a lawyer, and she accused Mom of partiality since Mom assisted me more with wedding planning after Catherine ruined everything. She unexpectedly arrived at our house last night. She was crying because she needed aid and was about to be evicted. I remained in the kitchen while Tyler opened the door. He blocked her path when she attempted to push past him to reach me. She began yelling that he was stuck in a loveless marriage with me, that she had always loved him more than I could, and that they were meant to be together. Normally extremely calm and courteous, Tyler informed her she needed professional treatment and threatened to get a restraining order if she returned to our home. She cried out that we would regret it and that we would pay a price for ruining her life. I just replied, "Catherine, you ruined your own life." As I made my way to the door, "We simply revealed your actions." While she was in the middle of her tirade, I shut the door. I've blocked her on social media, email, and the phone. Our parents understood when I informed them I was done with her. Although they aren't totally cutting her off, they have made it clear that they will no longer give her money or allow her to control them. We have to move to a different state since Tyler received a promotion at work. To be honest, the timing of our move next month couldn't be more ideal. We need a new beginning away from all of this drama. Catherine won't know about the move until we're already gone, so we haven't told her and don't intend to. I've discovered that toxic is toxic, regardless of blood relationship, despite the saying that blood is thicker than water. I've come to terms with the fact that my sister never existed and grieved for her. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me along the way. I'm excited to begin our new life without any drama. Am I the asshole for kicking out my dad after he said he couldn't afford to feed me anymore? Original post, throwaway. Here's the backstory. 28M, I got my own house now. Moved out at 18, not really by choice, my dad basically pushed me out. Our relationship's been rocky since then. He's always been a huge drinker and smoker, which caused plenty of issues back then. Fast forward, he lost his house a couple of months ago, and didn't keep up with loan payments. So he calls me up, says he needs a place to stay while he gets back on his feet. I laid out a few ground rules. Either pay rent, $400, or cover groceries, about $250-300, and absolutely no smoking in the house. He laughs, says I'm your father, I shouldn't have to pay. But I don't budge, so he reluctantly agrees to buy groceries. From the moment he moves in, it's just one problem after another. Leaves a mess everywhere, doesn't clean up, smokes inside even though I made it clear that's a no-go, and drinks like there's no tomorrow. Then one day, I have a girl over. And he just has this meltdown over it. So I tell him, listen, if he can't respect my space, he'll have to find somewhere else to stay. Things settle for a bit, but last week, he hit me with I don't have the money to buy groceries this month. I'm like, why? He says, well, you eat a lot. And admits he spent all his cash on smokes and drinks. That was it for me. I was done with him acting like he owned the place, Done with the flashbacks to dealing with him as a teen. I told him to pack up and leave. So, AITA? I set clear boundaries. He didn't follow through. Edit. I never thought my post would garner so many reactions. I'm glad I'm not TA, and thank you all for your support. I'd like to clear out a few things. No, we didn't have a formal contract when he moved in. It was oral-based. Kicking him out won't be easy, as police don't tend to offer much support to a son in relation to the father. The societal response is that a son should take care of his old parents. This was one of the reasons I agreed to take him in. Like if I could do something good for him, maybe he'd change his view about me. The feeling of being validated by my own dad after years of neglect was strong. NGGL. I see now how foolish it was to take him in. How would I get him out if he refuses to leave? He would go out to buy his supplies, I'd change locks the moment he leaves, and go out too. If he breaks anything, then it's cop time. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA relevant comments. Commenter 1, NTA, his I shouldn't have to pay showed his respect for you before he even moved in. Give him a month's notice maybe, but that is as far as your charity should go. OOP, I gave him until the first week of November. The only things he actually needs to pack are his drinks and smokes. He had stored almost everything from his house in storage. Commenter 2, NTA, kick him out. Apparently, losing his own house wasn't consequence enough for him to realize that he needs to change some things in his life. So, as he disrespected your reasonable rules, he needs to feel the consequences by losing the place he could stay again. And in case he gets family and friends involved, what inevitably will happen, you can tell everybody who says you should let him stay, that they are welcome to open their home for your dad and offer him to stay with them. OOP. I'm already painted black in front of most family members. I don't know what they're going to tell me which they haven't already said earlier. LOL. Commenter 3, NTA. I'm guessing at some point he's used the phrase, my house, my rules, and that's a sword that cuts both ways. OOP. He did. He most definitely did. Update. He moved out today. Sorry to disappoint y'all, but the process was surprisingly peaceful. The day of the last post, my dad told me he needed to talk. I braced myself. What he said was totally unexpected and welcome for me. He said that he couldn't bear the disrespect I've shown him, and he was never going to contact me again. His words, you failed me as a son. I told him if he needed help in the future he could contact me, but he must abide by some conditions. He scoffed and said he was leaving soon and didn't talk to me again. He left today. As I said earlier in the first post, he had little to pack, and had most of his possessions in storage. He didn't tell me where he was going and didn't bid adieu. I was comfortable with it. A toxic part of my life was being erased. I'm feeling a different kind of freedom, which I haven't felt even after I left home. Where he goes now is none of my concern, although I would have liked to at least know where he's going. Oh well, this is the update. Maybe a bit disappointing for this sub, but I personally am very relieved how this played out. Thank you all for the advice and all the responses, this meant a lot. Back to lurking with my main account. Peace. Top comments. Commenter 1, we can only be thankful when the trash takes itself out. Grats on your newfound peace. Commenter 2, change the locks and monitor your credit history for a while. Better to be safe than sorry. Congrats, and I hope you make the list of your independence. Commenter 3. Actually, I'm glad that it was a peaceful exit. I'm even more glad of how you stood up for yourself and didn't fall for the okie dokie tried to hit you with. You did a lot of growing to refuse to fit back into the box of being a child in regards to dealing with him. You're an adult, and if he has a problem accepting and respecting that, then leaving was what he needed to do, and it's good that he did. Bravo. Editor's note, marking this as concluded since OOP's father has moved out of the house and OOP also deleted the throwaway account. After my family took over my house and tried to push me out of my own room, I kicked them all out. I am a 26-year-old who lives with my parents in a home that I fully pay for. Although it sounds rather simple, it's much more intricate than that. I'll begin at the beginning. Last year, I purchased a home in the city. I pay for everything, including food, all of the bills, and the entire mortgage. Not a single penny is paid by my parents, Liz, 55F, and Tom, 55M, who are both retired teachers. Nor was it a case of moving back home because I couldn't afford rent. As a software developer, I actually earn a nice living, and I wanted to be nearer to employment options in the city. In addition, I felt that after they had supported me for years, it would be good to return the favor. It's a pleasant 3-bedroom home with a large living room and a backyard. It's nothing fancy but comfortable. I claim the master bedroom because I pay for everything. It has its own bathroom and a walk-in closet, which is a big plus because I detest having to share a bathroom. Since I spend around 80% of my time working from home, I set up my home office in the second bedroom with 2 monitors, a comfortable chair and all the supplies I need. For family visits, the third bedroom was kept as a guest room. Everything was wonderful at first. While I worked and took care of the house, my parents, who were glad to be in the city, went about their own business. Since they were my parents and I felt good about supporting them after everything they had done for me, I didn't mind paying the bills. Then, however, a change occurred. My mother casually dropped a bombshell during breakfast one morning. My older brother Jake, 28M, and his wife Emma, 26F, were considering relocating to the city, she said. They have reportedly been having difficulties and Emma is pregnant. They really need the help, she added. At first I didn't give it much thought. I thought that if Jake and Emma relocated, they would find a tiny apartment close by, but they have a history of jumping from one horrible circumstance to another. Things took a turn for which I was unprepared at that point. A few days later, my mother sat me down and, in her most innocent voice, informed me that Jake and Emma had been invited to remain with us, albeit only temporarily, until they were able to get back on their feet. They didn't ask if I was comfortable with this though. Oh no, they informed me after inviting them. Jake and Emma arrived with their luggage in hand, obviously intending to remain for the duration, while I was still processing the entire situation. The deal is this. As soon as Jake and Emma moved in, it was obvious they had no intention of leaving. I'm already anxious about the additional costs I'll have to pay. Now that I have 2 more people to support without anyone asking how I feel, I'm paying for everything, groceries, utilities, the mortgage, etc. Although I like my brother, Jake isn't the most responsible person. He always gets himself in a predicament where everyone else has to save him. Emma seems decent enough, but I don't like her entitled attitude, which makes me feel like everyone should take care of her because she's expecting. Almost instantly, the tension began to rise. Emma began making these innocuous-sounding remarks a few days after they moved home, but they are really bothersome. For example, "This place is so big, it must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself." Or, "When the baby stuff arrives, we're going to need a lot of space." At first, I didn't give it much thought. However, things became more heated one evening. Emma and Jake drew me away and said they needed a conversation. I hoped they would give financial assistance or perhaps apologize for the additional strain they were placing on me. However, no. "So we've been thinking it would make more sense if we took the master bedroom," explains Emma in a relaxed tone. Jake interrupted. "Yeah, the baby's going to need a lot of stuff, and your room has the walk-in closet and private bathroom." And I blinked, thinking I could have misheard. Let me remind you, these 2 were sitting here recommending that I give up my own room for them and their unborn child, even though I pay the mortgage and everything else. I was suddenly struck with boldness. I said, "Why don't you just take the guest room?" While maintaining my composure. "It's quite large." Emma looked at me as if I had just made a ridiculous suggestion. "There isn't a walk-in closet in that room," she stated. "The infant will require room." I was finished. I refused to give up my room. "You can either locate another place to stay or use the guest room." Jake was somewhat taken aback. As if he was surprised that I wasn't simply giving in. However, Emma was blatantly insulted. I realized then that things weren't going to work out. Things quickly started to go south. I observed Jake and Emma become quite at ease over the course of the following few days. Their belongings were all over the place, with baby magazines strewn on the dining table and shoes kicked off by the couch. Emma even began discussing the crib's location as if she had already made up her mind that they would remain in the master bedroom. I had to attend a meeting in the office one day. For the remainder of the night, the house was strangely quiet. Nobody tried to quarrel with me or knock on my door. They must have realized at last that I was no longer playing around. They didn't deserve to reside in my home if they didn't respect me. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. First update. I was hoping for a dramatic outburst, or for everyone to finally take me seriously once I handed out the eviction papers. Rather, there was an uncomfortable silence in the home. Due in part to my inability to fall asleep, I woke up earlier than usual the following morning. I was waiting for a certain event. Perhaps my parents would try to persuade me, or Jake might knock on my door and insist that I change my decision. However, none of that took place. The house was deserted when I woke up and entered the kitchen. No parents, no Emma, and no Jake. I even wondered, wishful thinking I suppose, if they packed up and departed in the middle of the night. I waited for someone to say something, anything at all, while I sat at the table and made my coffee. I had no desire to engage in small talk or repeat my explanation. I wasn't going to back down now that I'd drawn my line. I couldn't continue living that way. They had pushed me too far. They showed me no respect, and they certainly showed no respect for the fact that I was footing the bill. My mother eventually entered the kitchen. She appeared to have had little sleep. She simply got a cup of coffee and sat across from me without saying anything at first. It was strange that neither of us knew how to respond to the awkward silence. The stillness was finally broken by her. She spoke softly and wearily. "Honey, I know things have gotten out of hand." I just stared at my coffee and waited for her to continue without saying anything. Even though I knew she would have to apologize in some way, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She went on, her voice shaking slightly. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother. I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you. We were just trying to help them." I was surprised by that. At least not this quickly. I didn't think she would confess. I briefly believed that perhaps she was finally realizing that I wasn't the bad guy in this scenario. However, I was still unable to get over my irritation with all that had transpired. With a stronger tone than I meant, I responded, "You didn't just ignore what I wanted. You always took his side, as if you thought I would give in and let them have whatever they wanted." She stared down at her coffee for a few seconds before speaking. "I understand," she muttered. "However, we reasoned that you've always been the more resilient one. He has never had it easy, Jake." She always used that as an excuse. Jake required more help, he wasn't strong, and he had struggled more. Since I was the one with my life together, it seemed as though they didn't believe I had any boundaries. "You also believe that I've had it easy?" With my rage seething just below the surface, I asked. "This residence was purchased by me. The mortgage is paid by me. The groceries are paid for by me. Do you really believe that I can continue carrying you all indefinitely?" She nodded and groaned. "You're correct. We couldn't have asked for anything more from you. However, Jake, the baby is on the way." I interrupted her. "The baby is not the point of this. You guys haven't shown me any respect, and this is about that." She looked tired as she sighed once again. "We believed we were acting appropriately," she ultimately stated. "Emma and Jake don't have much. And who is to blame for that?" I fired back. "I didn't request that they move in. None of this was requested of me. You can't keep saving them by putting me in a bad position. They need to learn how to live their own lives." She seemed to finally comprehend, or at least attempt to, as she nodded. She said, "We'll figure something out," in a softer tone. "But don't push us away, please. Not in this manner." I tried to relax and sat back. Since they were my parents, I didn't want to expel them. However, I also couldn't continue to live this way. They would have to leave if things didn't change. I said, as quietly as possible, "I don't want to push you out. However, things must change. I can't continue to be treated like I don't belong in my own home." She simply nodded silently without arguing. "All right," she said. "We'll find a solution." She then walked out of the kitchen, leaving me to think alone once more. At least it seemed like they were beginning to take me seriously. Even though I wasn't sure if anything would actually change. When Jake eventually arrived later that afternoon, he appeared to have been holding his rage all day. He simply dropped down across from me in the living room, wearing the same angry look he had worn ever since I delivered him the eviction notice, without saying hello or anything else. I also remained silent and focused solely on my phone. "So this is how things will be?" At last, he spat, his voice dripping with resentment. "Are you really going to expel us?" I hardly raised my gaze. "I gave you a day. I'm going to contact the police if you're still here tomorrow." Jake snorted and shook his head as if I were the villain. "We are related. You don't treat your family like this." I reclined back in my chair and placed my phone down. "Yes, family members also don't take advantage of one another. Do you really think you can just take over my house after weeks of freeloading without doing anything?" "Jake, I'm not your backup plan." After that, he didn't say much. For a minute, he sat there, obviously wanting to dispute, but he ran out of things to say. He understood I wasn't bluffing because I had outlined my criteria. Jake stood up, mumbling to himself, and went off again after a few more uncomfortable moments of stillness. Jake was typical, always fleeing when he didn't get his way. Almost too peacefully, the remainder of the day went by. Even though I had no idea what Jake and Emma would do, I wasn't going to change my mind. They had more than enough time to work things out, yet all they had done was snoop me. Everything would be decided in the following 24 hours. Second update, I got up early once more on the morning of their eviction deadline. I was aware that today would either be the day Jake and Emma moved out or compelled me to file a lawsuit. Oddly enough, I no longer felt angry. I didn't even feel nervous. The only thing left to do was to follow through on what I had already recognized had to happen. The home was still eerily quiet when I woke up and went into the kitchen. Almost like the quiet before a storm, it felt different. Even though the refrigerator was still very empty from Jake and Emma's most recent grocery run, I prepared myself some breakfast. I was able to pull together enough money for a good supper, and as I ate, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly things had gotten out of hand. It was all right only a few months ago. I was doing well with my parents. Life was wonderful, I was working, and I was paying my expenses. Everything went haywire when Jake and Emma arrived. When individuals begin to feel entitled to things they didn't earn, it's amazing how quickly things can shift. I heard footsteps in the corridor a few hours later. After entering the kitchen and getting a cup of coffee, my dad took a seat at the table across from me. At first, he sipped his coffee and gazed out the window without saying anything. I couldn't tell whether he was upset with me or simply unsure of how to respond. The silence was finally broken by him. He muttered, "Jake and Emma are leaving today." I took a while to reply. Although I felt awful about it, I knew that this was the proper thing to do. I couldn't continue to allow them to exploit me, and if it meant they had to go, then so be it. With a quiet voice, my dad remarked, "They have nowhere to go. Until they work things out, they will be staying at a hotel for a while." Mid-bite, I paused and turned to face him. I did experience some guilt, but I pushed it away right immediately. They hadn't done anything to help themselves, even though I had given them plenty of time to get their act together. I said in a firm voice, "I gave them a chance. They gave me no other option." My father did not quarrel. He simply nodded and took another sip of his coffee, without attempting to guilt-trip me as I had assumed he would. I believe he eventually realized that this time, I wasn't going to back down. We couldn't return to the way things were after everything that had transpired. Jake and Emma began packing their belongings at lunchtime. I spent the majority of it in my room because I didn't want to argue with anyone else or hear more passive-aggressive remarks. However, I knew something was going to happen when I heard Jake's voice growing louder from down the corridor after a time. Jake did really knock on my door. He was standing there with the same irate expression he had had since the beginning of this whole situation when I opened it. "Are you really going to allow this to occur?" His voice was stern as he inquired. "You're simply going to dismiss us in this manner?" I leaned against the doorframe with my arms crossed. "I gave you a day. You were aware of what had to occur." Jake clenched his jaw, obviously attempting to control his rage. "Dude, we're family. You don't treat your family like this." I inhaled deeply while attempting to maintain my composure. "Families do not exploit one another. I won't throw you out without cause. For weeks, you have been wasting your time here without making any contributions. I've been covering everything, including the groceries and the mortgage. And you attempted to evict me from my own home and seize my room instead of showing gratitude. I will not allow that to occur." For a few seconds Jake remained silent. He was obviously furious, but he had nothing more to dispute about. Even though he didn't want to acknowledge it, he knew I was correct. "That's it then?" At last he muttered in a quiet voice. "You're simply dismissing us." I answered, "I'm giving you the same option I gave you yesterday. You have two options. Either move somewhere else or respect my personal space by remaining in the guest room. However, you're going to leave if you're unable to accomplish it." Jake gave me one last look, then turned and left without saying anything else. I took a deep breath and shut the door. Although I knew it had to be done, the entire scenario had been draining. Jake and Emma had left by mid-afternoon. Sincerely, I didn't want to watch them go, so I didn't. A dramatic farewell was unnecessary. Without a word to me, they packed up their belongings, put them in their car and drove away. After they left, the house was calmer and less tense. For the remainder of the day I didn't hear much from my parents. They were probably still assimilating everything that had transpired. Despite her outward signs of distress, my mother remained silent. Perhaps she now understood that Jake and Emma had pushed me too far, and this was the outcome, and that I wasn't the cause of it all. My mother knocked on my door that night. She entered, took a seat on my bed's edge and gazed at the floor for a long time. She was clearly struggling to find the proper words. She whispered, "They're gone." Without a word I nodded. She said, "I never thought it would get to this point. I was unaware of the amount of pressure we were placing on you." I felt some of the frustration subside as I gazed at her. I tried to defend my position by saying, "It's not that I didn't want to help. However, you guys treated me as if my needs and personal space weren't significant." She nodded and groaned. "You're correct, we ought to have noticed it sooner." For several minutes, neither of us really knew what to say next, so we sat in silence. Although I could tell she was upset, at least she now appeared to get my point. After a while, I broke the stillness and said, "I don't want you and Dad to leave. But I can't continue living this way if things don't change." She stood up slowly and nodded once more. "We'll work it out," she said. "I promise, things will be different." I experienced an odd mixture of relief and fatigue as she walked out of the room. There was still work to be done with my parents, but the matter with Jake and Emma was finally resolved. Even though I knew it wouldn't be simple, at least they seemed open to listening now. I felt as though I could breathe for the first time in weeks. The strain that had been choking me was gone, and the house was silent. Although it wasn't a flawless solution, I was at least able to regain my privacy and, more significantly, my respect. The house fell into a spooky silence when Jake and Emma left. Although I felt as though I could breathe at last, the incident continued to nag at the back of my mind. Even though I had won the fight for my room and my respect, I still questioned whether or not my relationship with my parents would ever truly return to normal. There was no turning back after I had drawn a firm line. Nevertheless, I thought that we could manage to proceed without all of the stress. The following days were peaceful, almost too quiet. My parents were largely private. Occasionally, my mother would say something courteous, but we never discussed the incident. My dad, who has always been the more reticent one, seems to completely avoid any confrontational situations. I wasn't sure if they were still processing everything that had happened or if this was their way of giving me space. In any case, I was fine with the silence. In order to avoid thinking about anything, I threw myself into my work in my home office for the majority of the day. Now, the office served as both my haven and my escape from the turmoil of the previous several weeks. However, I would occasionally catch myself reflecting on how things had transpired. Even though I knew I had made the correct decision, I couldn't help but feel a little awful about how everything had gone so wrong. Something had to give because I had been taken advantage of for far too long. A week or so following Jake and Emma's departure, my mother entered my office as I was working. She seemed to be thinking about something, judging by the way she hovered at the entrance. "Are you free for a moment?" Her voice was strangely gentle as she inquired. I turned to her and nodded, saving my work. "What's going on?" She nervously wrung her hands as she entered the room. "Everything has been on my mind, including Jake, Emma, and our treatment of you." I remained silent so she could talk. She seemed to have something she wanted to talk about. Her voice cracked slightly as she said, "I just wanted to say that we didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter. We believed that we were assisting Jake, but now I realize that we were overburdening you. We took advantage of the fact that you have done more for us than we could have ever dreamed for. I apologize." I was taken by surprise by the apology. Although I had anticipated some sort of recognition soon, it was more painful for me to hear her express it so bluntly. Her honesty was evident in her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I had the impression that she genuinely knew how I was feeling. I tried to speak steadily as I said, "Thank you, Mom." However, it was more than simply the house or the money. Respect was at issue. I had the impression that none of you respected me or the work I was doing to keep things going. Although I didn't mind assisting, I couldn't continue to live like this. She wiped a tear from the corner of her eye and nodded. "You're correct. We ought to have honored your personal space. It won't occur once more." Long emotional chats weren't my thing, but this one felt essential. I felt as though a burden had been removed, and I could now envision a way forward free from ongoing conflict and animosity. I got a little regretful grin from my mom, and she went back to the kitchen. For several minutes, I sat there, taking in what had been spoken. Although it was not a complete resolution, it was a positive step. A few weeks later was the actual turning moment. By that time, a new routine had been established in the house. The unpleasant atmosphere that had pervaded every room since Jake and Emma's departure had gradually subsided, and my parents were more considerate of my personal space. After living in a battle zone for the past few months, I could finally feel the house turning back into a home. My dad was seated at the kitchen table one evening, looking especially serious, when I got home after an office meeting. Typically, my dad preferred to leave most of the hard talking to my mom. However, I could tell he had something significant to say by the way he was sitting and looking into his coffee cup. Trying to keep things informal, I said, "Hey," and got a drink out of the refrigerator. "Is everything all right?" His countenance was contemplative as he looked up. "I've wanted to speak with you." Curious but not really concerned with what he had to say, I took a seat across from him. Leaning forward with his hands clasped in front of him, he inhaled deeply. "About the house and all of your efforts to maintain this place." I remained silent since I could tell he needed to vent. His voice was low as he started, "I realize I haven't said much. However, I've given it a lot of thought. I want you to know how much I appreciate all that you have done for this family, more than any of us could have ever imagined." I was surprised. Hearing my dad speak those words felt important because he wasn't the kind to open up like this. He went on, "You've carried more than your fair share, and you didn't ask for any of this. I apologize for the way things ended between Jake and Emma, and I just wanted to let you know that I see it." It struck me differently when he acknowledged everything I had gone through than when my mother apologized, because I could see he had been holding on to this for some time. Although neither meant more than the other, my dad's reserved demeanor somehow gave his remarks a deeper meaning. I said, "Thanks, Dad," since I was at a loss for words. "That is very significant." He took another sip of his coffee and nodded. "All I want is for things to improve for everyone." Although the chat was brief, it was sufficient. He seemed sincere, and I had the impression that things were at last beginning to improve at that precise moment. Over the next few weeks, things kept getting better. I no longer felt like I was bearing the burden of the home by myself once my parents and I established a new routine. They began to assist more, cleaning, helping with groceries, and generally showing me respect for my personal space. Although it wasn't flawless, it was a significant step up from our previous situation. After they departed, I didn't hear much from Jake and Emma. According to my mom, they were looking for a place of their own and were spending some time in a motel. I refrained from prying. Even though I adored my brother, I needed him to learn how to be independent, so I had set clear limits. I'd be happy to stay away for a while if that meant it. About a month after the entire incident, Jake texted me one afternoon. It was succinct and direct, not his typical tone, but it sounded genuine. "Hey, I understand that things went wrong. I simply wanted to apologize for the way things turned out. I hope we can speak soon as we work things out." I looked at the message for a long time, unsure of how to react. A part of me was grateful for the gesture, but another part of me was still upset about how everything had turned out. I took a while to respond. It took me longer to process. I took some time that evening to write a response, attempting to be polite yet explicit about my position. "I appreciate the message. I'm happy that you two are working things out. I need some time, but I hope we can communicate soon as well. When both of us are ready, let's catch up." A weird sensation of closure came over me as I pushed send. Even though I didn't expect things to be flawless, at least we could communicate once more. A few weeks ago, that was more than I could have imagined. I started to feel more at ease with everything as time passed. My parents were finally accepting my boundaries, and there was no longer any tension in the house. Above all, I regained my sense of control over my life and my personal space. The journey here was not simple. One of the most difficult things I had ever had to do was to stand up for myself, especially when it meant going against my family. However, it was ultimately worthwhile. I had gained an important lesson. Even in your own family, respect is something you have to earn. It is not something you can demand. I had earned mine too. In retrospect, I'm happy I didn't give up. It would have been simple to give in and let Jake and Emma take over my room, to allow my parents to continue to manage the house as if I were a visitor. I didn't want that life though. I'd longed for my own personal space and dignity, and suddenly I had both. Perhaps Jake and Emma's situation will change in the future. Perhaps we'll be as close as we were before all of this drama. However, for the time being, I'm only concerned with living my life as I need to, and for the first time in a long time, that feels sufficient. A coworker asked me to be her man of honor. I said no and she went nuts. What did I miss? Original post. This happened yesterday and I'm still confused. Yesterday was my first day back to work after being off for 2 weeks. This is kinda important. One of my coworkers had gotten engaged the week before I left. When she announced at work, we all did the congratulations and were happy for her type of things. I thought it was over. So when I left for vacation last, I knew no plans had yet been made. Then yesterday when I went back to work, my boss Kim and best friend Laura said that coworker Claire was looking for me. I asked what was up and they weren't sure, but she was carrying a little gift bag. A few minutes later, Claire found me and asked how my vacation was. I was telling them about it and she cut me off and said she had a very important question to ask. She handed me a little gift bag and asked if I would be her best man of honor for her wedding. I thanked her and told her that typically this would traditionally go to a close female relationship. She responded that there was nothing traditional about her wedding, so it was good. I looked over at Laura and Kim, who were both trying to keep from laughing. I again thanked her and congratulated her and told her that I wasn't interested in being part of her wedding party and that I would be happier being a guest in the audience. I swear when I said this, it was when we watched her entire demeanor change and a switch flipped. She went off saying that I have to be at her wedding and that she doesn't understand why I would say no. I told her that we only knew each other for a short time and that I had no interest in trying to plan parties, dinners, and shopping trips. She told me I needed to think about it and she would get back to me later. I told her to go for it, but my answer will be the same. She walked away and I looked at Kim and Laura and asked what the ever-loving fresh creepy hell was that. Kim started to laugh and said she didn't know. But saying no like I did might have saved me a lot of headaches in the future. Laura made the comment that she went straight to Bridezilla and this was a look into what she was going to be like. Claire came back today, however she went with a different approach and handed me a list of what she wants me to do and her vision of how she sees things. I asked her why she gave me this and she said that as her man of honor these were my responsibilities. I told her again that I was not going to do any of this. She said again that she needs me to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Then she asked, "Haven't you ever wanted to be a part of something special?" I told her I was. I was a nurse. Enter Kim, who could sense that I needed help and told Claire one of her patients needed her help. I told Kim that if this keeps up I might need her help. She said she was already watching it and would intervene if I needed it. What did I miss? We aren't that close. She just transferred down to my unit from a different unit 6 months ago. I had no idea who she was until that point. Laura is saying that she is close in age to me and she might feel that to be enough of a connection. Did I miss something? When we are asked, are we supposed to automatically gush and jump up and down in excitement? Why is saying no a bad thing? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, it seems Kim is useless here. You really need to go over Kim's head and nip this in the bud right now because Claire isn't taking no for an answer. OOP, Kim will help, I know she will. She is just waiting to see what her next step is. I have had to have her help with a work issue before. If I have problems with her the next time we work together, I'll let Kim loose. Could this be some weird way to flirt? It won't work with me. I like dick. LOL, and I have a boyfriend. LOL commenter. I'm not an expert, but isn't this an HR issue now? I mean, isn't that like harassment? OOP, it becomes an issue if I report it. My boss is seeing all of it so far and has said that she is watching the situation and will intervene if it keeps going. I'm off tomorrow so I won't see her for a couple of days. Commenter. She wants to show off how different and edgy she is by having a man of honor. She may also admire your organizing skills and get it done demeanor and thinks you'll throw her great wedding-related parties. OOP, I'm a bad gay guy friend. I'm organized when it comes to a lot of things. But planning a wedding is something I have never done and really don't want to learn to do. If I were to ever get married, it's midnight under a full moon at the beach with a few friends and a cookout the next day. LOL commenter. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but since she's advertising that it's a non-traditional wedding, is it possible she's after you for a specific reason? Are you gay or part of a racial minority? It's possible she wants her wedding to look super diverse for Instagram reasons and maybe she's after you for a specific vibe in the pictures. Regardless of the reason, NTA. OOP. I don't know her background. Yes, I am gay and the entire department knows it because I was dating a former nurse and we broke up. Now I'm dating someone from a different department and it's all known. All she said was it was a less than traditional wedding and it would be okay. Yesterday K&L asked if I was afraid of something about it. Maybe if I had to wear a dress. I said I would fucking rock the dress. I might need a push-up to fill out the front of a dress if it's strapless. LOL, but I just don't want anything to do with it. I have no interest. My life is crazy enough right now. Planning a wedding would go from crazy to insane. Update 1. Hey everyone. First I apologize. I never thought this was going to go as crazy as it did. I want all of you to know I read all of your responses and responded to as many as I was able to. Thank you all for your amazing insights and comments. Many that made me laugh, which I needed. I have been sick and that really helped to cheer me up. I had to meet with my lawyer today regarding family issues. Editor's note, OOP goes into detail about those issues in other posts on his profile, but they weren't relevant here, so I didn't include them. My neighbor, best friend, coworker Laura took me. I really felt awful and driving wasn't a good idea. We were talking about this on the way and we both were asking a lot of the same questions that all you were asking. The big one was that we were asking about the circumstances of her transfer. She went from Med-Surg 4W to the ER. That is a huge change. I have to work tomorrow so we will see what happens. But Laura and I are going to ask him about the transfer and raise a couple of other concerns. After I got home from the meeting with my lawyer, I slept for the rest of the day. Many of you asked about if Claire and I hang out outside of work. The answer is no. I really don't know anything about her. I have helped her a few times with patients and different things, but our relationship is 100% purely work-related. That was why I was so surprised that she asked me to do this. That is why I was so surprised that she asked me about being the man of honor. I have a very small friend base, and in all honesty I like to keep it that way. I really have no interest in being a part of this. I'm not a wedding person. After reading so many bridezilla stories and hearing about over-the-top weddings, they have become a huge turnoff to me, spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars with insane, unrealistic demands that turn people against each other. Why? I would rather use that money and spend that time planning my next trip or vacation. Many people said that I was being used as a token or prop in a wedding. Or a gay best friend. I never really thought about it. I admit that I'm out and proud. But I'm not going to just pretend to be someone's friend just so they can fulfill some kind of fetish they have for wanting to have a gay best friend, or some kind of status she feels the need to fulfill. It takes me a lot to get offended, but if this were actually the case, then I would really be rather offended. I was not put on the face of the earth to be someone's play toy. A lot of people have said that maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend. She does. She has brought him in before. If she has any insecurity, I don't understand it. She is attractive, smart, and knows her stuff. So I'm at a loss as to why she is acting like this. A lot of people say go to HR. I'm starting that process with my boss Kim. She is completely aware of the situation being with us when all this happens. She has told me that she is watching the situation and will jump in if I need her to. I trust her completely. While Kim and HR can control the situation from the hospital, they can't control the situation from a personal level if she were to maybe follow me home or a situation like that. So I think that covers it all. I wish I could say this is over. But most likely there is more to come. Please update me. Comments. Commenter. About that name. OOP's username. You're not just an RN, because there's nothing just about RNs, or other nurses. You folks, regardless of gender, do the medical heavy lifting, and when we can't get a straight, sorry, answer from the oh-so-busy MDs, the nurses provide the no-shit information. OOP. My name is kind of an ongoing running inside joke. I'm told at least once a day or so from a patient that I'm just a nurse. One day I heard it 3 times. I don't really take offense to this. And in a joking way I repeated what the patient said, and my boss Kim jumped my case about. That's not the case at all. I love my job. It's a huge part of me and who I am. It's a part of my identity. Commenter. I'm curious about her list of demands or responsibilities. Like, did she really think you would change your mind now that you had all this BS work to do and money to spend? OP, it pretty much had me planning the whole thing. She wanted me to plan the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, coordinate dress shopping and fittings, make sure everyone was having fun with the whole thing. Just to name a few. Commenter, OP. What the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is this? LMAO oop. I had no idea what the ever-loving fresh creepy bell was from something. It's just something I have always said. Mini update in comments. Next day. I'll be posting an update in a day or two. Things came to a head today and it was pretty much just as everyone was saying. I need to take some time to understand everything that happened today. I also have a meeting scheduled Monday with the director of nursing at my hospital, which should bring closure. I hope so. Update post. This intro is going to be long, but I'm telling you about this for a reason, and later in this update, it will make sense. I'm hoping this will be done and that this will be the last of this whole situation. I was born into a family where I was referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with. I lived in the shadows of my sister, who was the child my parents wanted. They wanted one child, which was a girl. That way dad had his daddy girl and mom had mommy little princess. Then I came along. Keep in mind that I'm 23, so back then my parents had options but chose to not use any of those options. So instead my parents raised my sister, and I was raised by a nanny who even to this day is one of the biggest influences in my life, and I am so grateful for her. She helped me so much. I finally realized that all these years later, that by being referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with, that they stripped me of my humanity and individuality and self-worth as a person. I think that's why I have worked so hard to establish myself in my career and in my life. As a way to become a person again and not just be that issue that needed to be dealt with. This past Thursday things came to a head with the bridezilla known as Claire, and the truth came out. My best friend Laura has been sticking close to me when we worked together if Claire was to start something. We weren't sure if she was going to leave it alone or start up again. I was really hoping that it was done. But she had to try once again. I've been sick and I had a busy morning, so I really just wanted a few minutes to go to the bathroom, grab a quick snack and maybe breathe. Claire came up and had her list and asked if I had a few minutes to talk about the wedding planning. I looked at her and told her again that I was not interested in being part of her wedding and that I was not going to help in any way, and she needed to drop the subject and leave me alone. Again she went into the whole thing of how I was going to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Here we go with that line all of you loved the first time. Why in the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is it so important for me to be your man of honor? I'm not interested and I'm not doing it. It is as exactly as pretty much all of you told me it would be. She was just planning on using me as a token or a play toy. She took all of the fucked up gay stereotypes that are out in society and put them into one sentence. What modern liberal woman isn't going to have a gay bestie on her arm for special events? I felt everything in my stomach move and a wave of nausea came over me and I felt like I couldn't get to the bathroom fast enough. This pissed Laura off to no end. Laura is really kinda like the overprotective sister that I wish I would have had and took Claire off to visit our boss Kim and laid it all out. Everything that was said. While I wasn't in on that conversation, Laura and Kim filled me in on what was said. Kim came to check on me and I was still hiding in the bathroom. She knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. I asked her for a bottle of water first. While I was waiting, I realized two things. I realized why I chose to not hang out with her and why I didn't like her. I couldn't figure out why I didn't like her, just that there was something that gave me the heebie-jeebies. But I realized that I didn't like her because she is a different version of my sister. While Claire is educated and employed, she doesn't care about other people and their feelings. She is like my sister in the sense that if she wants something bad enough, she will figure out how to get it. The second thing I realized was that she did exactly what my parents did to me. She completely dehumanized me and reduced me to an entity. Just kinda turned me into a token or a thing for her. I think the word that best describes it is I must be a play toy. What really gets me is that just like my sister, Claire doesn't think she did anything wrong and I'm being too sensitive and a delicate snowflake. The next day an emergency meeting was held at work and Claire is being suspended pending investigation and a new transfer is being looked into. Kim made the request for her to be terminated. The director of emergency nursing said this was a last resort, but she was going to be looking into options which could be sending her to a new hospital or facility. This didn't go over well with me. I asked what would happen if she did the exact same thing to someone different. She didn't really give me an answer. But she said she still needs to look into a few things and at this point she is suspended. Anyway. Here it is. I'm still pretty sick and had to work this weekend. If I can, I'll respond. I want to thank everyone for all the amazing support. I am going back to my lawyer to see if he can figure out how to send her a cease and desist letter to make sure she doesn't contact me. I'm heading to bed. Have a good night. Edit. I keep forgetting to thank my boyfriend. He has been with me on this but more in the background. First when we were laughing about it. But when everything Thursday happened he was there as well. Elle was able to get him away from his unit for a little bit for the okay boyfriend hug. He stayed the night with me a couple of nights as well, also helping with me being sick. So yeah. I'm very lucky to have such great support. OOP's comments. Commenter. What if she targets a vulnerable gay patient next? She's a danger and a liability for your employers to be sued. OOP. Thank you for this response. I just texted Kim and asked her about this. She said she was trying to get her fired. And she is hoping this will help the purpose. My boyfriend won't ask for my hand, and now my dad is staging a family boycott of our wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish? Original post. I've been with my boyfriend, M25, for 3 years. We both just finished school, and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I could not be happier. I love him and he is going to be an awesome dad someday, but my BF is in a very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend did not ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said he will pay for at the restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive/possessive with his mom as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he's met my whole family and gotten to know them. He says they have always known his intentions and he never made it secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels he was done enough to announce his intentions and all of them seem to approve of him. He says that at this point he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday my mom told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mom says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my two older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mother that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I have decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother is obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what and she would not say. But from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My two sisters and my mom have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. Edit. I'm getting some comments about my boyfriend asking for my parents' blessing instead of permission, or hand. I just can't see the difference. There might be one but I don't see it. Is there a big difference? TL.dr. My boyfriend won't ask my dad for my hand in marriage and my parents is having my family boycott my wedding and threatening other consequences. Relevant comments. Oopie, thanks for the congrats and comments. I was just thinking as I read some comments here. One comment said that my parents should not have staged the boycott either way. So maybe the boycott signals something more than just my father wanting to be included in some way. I don't know. I'm now worried that the boycott and calling all my relatives signals more controlling issues that my dad has that I never noticed before. My two older sisters had no problems with their wedding because they did everything the way my dad liked. So I'm scared now that maybe my boyfriend is right that it's not just a tradition. Deleted. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. No, both he and your mother are being controlling. And they are attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé. Otherwise you're setting precedent for this type of behavior interference for the rest of your marriage. OOP, this is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does. So I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptized and all that. Pastanazgul. You two need to have a discussion about how the children will be raised religion-wise now, before you have the child. Just advice from someone who learned the hard way. OOP, we did. We don't want religion in our children's lives. We decided that education is going to be the focus and they will make their own minds up about religion once they are educated adults. I grew up Catholic but I don't want that for my kids. My husband grew up somewhat Christian and he still believes in God but he doesn't want religion to be a part of our family either. We have talked about this subject to death. You're right, it's very important. I realize we might change our minds later, who knows? But my family doesn't know about this. I have a feeling after this boycott that my parents will stage another one when they find out we won't be Catholic. Update. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my two sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my two brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my SIL actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There has been no contact between me and my family, other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore, I just toss them. I don't know why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away, so it's not like I will run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true, that they would come crawling back when we had children. I am now expecting our first child, a girl. She will be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands, not request demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on the speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said that he had already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet talk me to raising his voice at me and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper and again begged me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told I declined every time. He lets my mom do the dirty work so he can later hide behind her and deny he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody but be a good cop also. He'll never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him our daughter would not be baptized, or Catholic at all, no offense to Catholics. I told him he was too manipulative and controlling and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, the day and for several days after that phone call I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses, and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family there's no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they're all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions even if it means I'm a bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all his sheep back into our lives. TL Doctor, nobody in my family showed up to our wedding other than one of my sisters. Everyone is banned from our lives. Relevant comments, downvoted commenter. He should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace, geez, I mean really pushing your family away for such a stupid reason. On their side and yours. OP, but that's the thing. After that one small task they would want to name my daughter, another small task, then they would ask I go have the baby near them, another small task, then have her baptized by their priest, then they pick her school, then they make life decisions for her like they tried with me and my siblings, all small tasks. OP replying to a downvoted comment that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comment. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling and abusive people, or people who condone such behavior. After years of abuse I was glad my husband decided my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting with my dad at every turn. My family treated me unfairly, favoring my twin. In the end, she used lies and manipulation to steal my fiancé. Life has a tendency of catching you off guard, don't you think? I, 35F, never imagined that I would be here, sharing my heart on Reddit at the age of 35. The idea that my fiancé, the man I believed I would spend the rest of my life with, married my estranged twin sister after just a week of getting to know her, still baffles me. What brought me here? Everything's a lengthy and agonizing tale, but I must let everything out. I suppose I ought to begin at the beginning. To put it mildly, my twin sister and I have had a complex family dynamic for as long as I can remember. My sister was obviously the star child from a young age. You would assume that parents would treat twins equally, wouldn't they? False. In our family, my sister always came first and I came second. When we were young, it began with modest things. My sister always had the first choice when our parents bought us clothes or toys. She would always make the first choice, leaving me with anything she didn't like, even if the products were identical but different in color. I would be lectured about selfishness, how the gifts were the same anyway, and how acting entitled would make me never get far in life if I ever objected. The preference increased in intensity as we aged. I'll admit that I resented my sister for enjoying the attention and pampering. We were never close, and as we started middle school, our distance from one another only grew. She began hanging out with the cool kids, and distanced herself from our group of friends. I could at least have my buddies to myself and find some quiet at school, so in a way this was better for me. The distance between my sister and I continued to widen throughout middle and high school. By the time we graduated, our social networks and areas of interest had entirely changed. Because I would be interacting with her less, this worked for me. Although she continued to be cruel, particularly at school when she tried to appear cool to her peers, I had grown accustomed to her conduct by that point and was not particularly bothered by it. Things between us became so bad at the conclusion of high school that there was no turning back. I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I put a lot of effort into my college applications. In addition, I wanted to stay up with my pals, who were all striving for top schools. Since I wasn't interested in finding out, I never inquired about my sister's essay preparation. However, for someone who wasn't ready or didn't seem to know what she wanted to do, she exuded far too much confidence in her admissions. I was devastated to learn that she was accepted to my ideal school, but I was not. Even though I was sad, I felt uneasy. I discovered, just in time, that she had stolen my work and turned it in as her own after doing some research. I was enraged. As usual, my parents would have told me to suck it up and that nothing could be done now, so I didn't want to inform them. I had had enough of being polite and being trampled. I made the decision to go nuclear. I sent the university an email outlining her plagiarism and proving that the material was actually mine. Additionally, I informed them of the circumstances at home and asked that they use caution when responding to her. They did, however, reply and put her on a blacklist after discovering that she had plagiarized during the application process. She sat stunned when she received the email and gave me such a hateful look that I thought I would pass out. However, she was unable to tell her parents anything. That she stole my essay. What could she have said? I was more than happy that she was finally receiving the credit she deserved, even though I knew I had put her in a difficult situation. I'll confess that it was stressful and, to me at least, a little funny. She was aware of my actions and I was aware of hers. She was unable to go because it would require her to acknowledge that she had stolen my work, and I didn't want to go to my parents for a resolution. Unfortunately for her, this injustice devastated her parents. They insisted that there was no plagiarism involved, and were resolved to bring it up with the university. It became messy at this point. When my parents emailed the institution, they received a thorough response regarding her application and the work, my work, from which she had stolen. I mistakenly thought that after they witnessed what their beloved daughter had done to me, they would finally accept her for who she truly was, and perhaps, just possibly, I would start to play a significant role in the family. The exact reverse was what took place. I spent days being scolded for intentionally destroying my sister's life and profession. They chose someone to harass as soon as they discovered that I was the one who had reported the plagiarism. She stole my work, but that didn't matter. The fact that she was at fault didn't matter. The fact that she prevented me from attending my ideal school didn't matter. The fact that I had exposed her without their knowledge was all that mattered. They called me all kinds of names and stated that talking to them about it would have been the right thing to do, after which they would have come up with a solution. I informed them that letting her leave without any consequences would have been their only option, and I would have been told to accept it and apply somewhere else. My home was a wreck and nobody wanted to hear my side of the story. It was now obvious that I would always be the fall guy and that my sister would never be held accountable for anything she did. I was just waiting for college, but the following few months were terrible. I knew that as soon as I left the house, I would never return. In any case, there was nothing to return to, so I did just that. I instantly stopped communicating with my sister and my parents after leaving for college. After her little incident, she was dead to me, and I had no intention of ever seeing her again. Going to college was a welcome adjustment. I worked hard, had a good life and made good friends. Determining to succeed on my own without assistance from my family, I immersed myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I met around this period, and we remained friends for a few years. We had the same group of friends, even though he was my senior in college. He asked me to be his girlfriend just before he graduated, and I accepted. Since he was one of my best friends and I enjoyed spending time with him, I thought a relationship would be the natural next step. He informed me that he had been crushing on me for years and had been trying to have the guts to ask me out until I said yes. Sincerely, I thought this was cute and informed him that even if he had asked me sooner, I would have said yes. For what it's worth, our connection was good. We knew each other well because we were already close friends. A certain amount of ease and candor was present and it just happened. I also told him about my family's whole predicament. I clarified that nothing could ever force me to speak to my sister again and that I had very little contact with either of my parents. I requested that he honor that. His family is picture perfect, therefore he found it ridiculous that a family could be so dysfunctional. He is the eldest of 4 siblings, all of whom are supportive and close, and his parents are deeply in love. He has never experienced my ordeal. I liked and appreciated the familial dynamic he came from, and I respected that. The affection they had for one another was really sweet. I couldn't help but feel a little envious because I had never had it. But because he couldn't imagine dysfunctional families, I made it plain to him that he should never expect me to return to my family and attempt to make things right. I trusted him since he appeared fine with it. I had no idea that this would turn out to be my worst life decision. I concentrated on developing my career after college. I was resolved to show myself, and if I'm being completely honest, my family, that I could be successful without their help or connections. I put myself into my work and worked my way up the corporate ladder. I had a prosperous marketing career, a great downtown apartment, and a circle of close friends who had become my adopted family by the time I was in my early 30s. We both decided to take things slowly, but Em and I kept dating. Neither of us felt the need to rush into marriage because we were both focused on our careers. I felt like I had at last found someone who understood and supported me, and the arrangement was comfortable. Em proposed to me 2 years ago when I was 33. Yes, of course, I said. By that point we had been dating for about 8 years, and I was certain that he was the man I wanted to live my entire life with. His family welcomed me with wide arms when he first introduced me to them. Even though it wasn't biological, I felt like I had a family at last. I formed separate ties with each of his siblings, who were very hospitable, 2 sisters and 1 brother. Even before I married him, I felt like I was a member of the family. The next natural step was marriage, and I was quite content with my life and my relationship. Planning for the wedding, honeymoon, and other details took up the whole year prior to our planned wedding last year. It was a difficult period for our relationship as well as stressful, since I recognized then that we had differences and that it would take work to overcome them. Nevertheless, we voluntarily persevered. While deciding on the guest list, we got into one of our most heated arguments. He wanted to invite a large number of people, including his immediate relatives, some uncles, aunts, his siblings' partners, and others, but I wanted a small, private wedding. However, I didn't have any family members I wanted to invite. I informed him that I genuinely didn't want my family near me on my wedding day and that I would only be inviting my friends. He initially agreed, but I could tell he was hesitant. When I asked him if there was an issue, he said that there wasn't, so I dropped it. Nevertheless, he approached me a week later and advised me to invite my family since there would be no wedding without a family present. I gave him a wide-eyed look and informed him that I had always made it plain that my family was not involved in my life. There was no reason to be upset about my parents' absence because they were unaware that I was engaged and that the bride and groom were the only 2 guests required for a wedding. He refused to give up. He said that any arguments I had with them could be put aside for a single day and that his intention was only to invite them to the wedding, not to establish a romantic relationship or extend forgiveness. Any invitation, I informed him, would imply that I wanted to patch things up, and I didn't want to do that. I should have left him there. Looking back, I could tell that he had chosen to hurl this at me even though he claimed to understand my reality and my upbringing, which I had always been open about. But in love, I was a fool. I nearly stopped talking to him after our many arguments, but I knew deep down that we had to come to an agreement. He finally explained to me why he insisted on inviting my family after much back and forth. He claimed that he didn't want his relatives to believe that he was getting married to a woman who didn't get along well with her family. He believed that my parents' absence would reflect negatively on his family, which is highly traditional and has always lived by the family first motto. That was not what he wanted for me. I initially believed his way of thinking to be considerate and caring, but I soon came to see how flawed it was. Since his parents and siblings already knew that I didn't get along with mine, he was more concerned about the impression his family would get, particularly his extended family, than he was about the psychological effects on me. I should have seen that the show was more important to him than his wife. I paid the price for not doing so. I finally decided to phone my folks after much back and forth, but there was where I crossed the boundary. I informed him that while I would have them there, my sister and no other family members would be present. My family would not be permitted to speak, and there would be no father-daughter dance. He had to put himself in my shoes, and that was the only need for inviting them. Fortunately, he consented, and he was aware that he had little other option. Additionally, I cautioned him against reaching out to people on his own. I would only call and extend an invitation when I thought the time was appropriate. I knew they would make something up and convince my sister to go if I told them too soon, and I couldn't agree to that. To be honest, I also hoped that they might not be able to make it if I told them too late. In this manner, even though I would be technically correct, I would still get my way. I believe M had a suspicion, but even if he had, he remained silent. So that was that. 6 weeks before the wedding, I told my parents, and they assured me that the whole family will undoubtedly be present to support me on this wonderful day. I interrupted them immediately and informed them that my sister would not be attending my wedding in any way. I would take them out myself if they attempted to be cunning and brought her anyhow, even if just the 2 of them were invited. They attempted to object, claiming that it was the ideal moment for the family to get back together, that I should stop being a baby, that I had gotten my revenge, and that I should be content. Before the wedding, I informed them that this was the only way I would be contacting them. They were aware of the location and the time, and they could attend if they so desired. But I wouldn't think twice about taking the required action if they tried anything. I hung up the phone after that. I was completely mistaken to believe that was a strong enough warning to stop them from making any plans. I should have anticipated that my sister would show up there and cause chaos. She did create a mess, but it was far more extensive than I had anticipated. I need to get this off my chest, yet as I sit here typing this, I can feel the hurt and rage rising within me once more. What happened next was a betrayal so profound and agonizing that it rocked the foundations of the life I had worked so hard to create, and I needed to tell someone, anyone, what happened next. In my upcoming update, I'll continue this. I need some time to gather my thoughts because writing it all at once hurts too much. I appreciate you reading this far. I had no idea that I would be telling my tale in this way, but here we are. I would be grateful to hear your opinions and advice. Right now I feel completely lost. Update 1. A week has passed since my last post, and I'm still in shock about everything that transpired. We appreciate all of your encouraging messages and remarks. I never thought that strangers on the internet would be so generous. Where did I leave off then? Yes, the dreaded family invitation and the wedding planning. In case you're not convinced, things have gotten worse. My parents came into town via plane the week before the wedding. They asked if Em and I could meet at their hotel so they could give me something. Em persuaded me to go despite my reservations, suggesting that it might be a peace offering. He assured me that he would accompany me and that we would depart as soon as difficulty appeared. I felt sick to my stomach when we got to the motel. I sensed a problem as soon as we entered their room. My twin sister was seated on the bed, grinning smugly, and there she was. Just a few days before my wedding, my parents had ambushed us in the hopes of forcing a family reunion. I went cold. The old emotions of hurt, betrayal, and rage returned with a vengeance. Em put his hand on my back when he could tell I was upset, but it didn't help much. With her arms extended as though the past 15 years of separation didn't matter, my mother took a stand. We thought it was time to move on from the past, she remarked, her voice brimming with fake tenderness. Your sister wants to talk to you about something. My sister got up and began what seemed like a prepared statement before I could respond. I apologize for what happened with the college application, and I know I hurt you, she started. I've regretted that ever since I was foolish and young. I gave a sour laugh. Young and dim-witted? We weren't 8, we were 18. You were fully aware of what you were doing. My father added in a firm tone. Now, let's avoid bringing up previous points of contention. As a family, we are here to move forward. I looked to Em expecting him to support me and remind them of our wedding deal, but he was silent and had a serious look on his face. I trembled as I murmured, may we go now? After he paused, he said something that completely shocked me. Perhaps we ought to listen to them. After all, they are trying. I turned and left the room without saying another word. Trying to make sense of what had happened, I headed to the hotel bar and ordered a heavy drink. Hours went by. My phone was vibrating, and I chose to ignore the never-ending barrage of missed calls and messages. When I eventually returned to our flat, it was already midnight. Em was pacing the living room while she waited to wake up. Hours passed while we argued. Em insisted that I should at least attempt to make amends because family was vital. How he could be so oblivious to the suffering they had inflicted upon me was beyond me. We were clearly at a standstill as the night went on. I need some time, I responded at last. I'll be spending a few days with a friend. I must think. The days that followed were a haze. I ignored me and my family's calls and texts and stayed with my best pal. I needed time to reflect and determine my true desires. The more I considered it, the more I saw how deeply Em's actions had damaged my faith in him. I eventually consented to meet with Em 3 days prior to the wedding. A calm cafe where we had gone on our first date years prior served as a neutral setting for our meeting. I didn't miss the irony. Em appeared awful. He appeared to have aged years in a matter of days, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I was still angry and hurt, but I also felt bad for putting him through this. He started, "I'm sorry," as soon as I took a seat. "I ought not to have pressured you to make amends with your relatives. I was mistaken." Hours passed while we recapped past exchanges and upsetting experiences. Ultimately, we reached a decision that felt necessary but shattered my heart. Em whispered, "I think we need to postpone the wedding. We clearly have some issues we need to work through." With a mixture of relief and regret, I nodded. "I think that's for the best." We came away from the cafe with a rough plan. We would separate for a month, avoid communication, and give our desires some serious thought. We would then get together once more to determine whether to proceed with the wedding or, well, we didn't want to consider the other option. I began making calls the following day. I informed our vendors that the wedding would have to be postponed indefinitely. Although we lost some deposits, most were understanding. I communicated with our visitors by sending out a general email outlining the circumstances in ambiguous language. Then there was quiet. Like an unending desert, the month without communication stretched out in front of me. To distract myself from the uncertainties of my relationship, I immersed myself into my work and picked up new interests. I initially incessantly checked my phone, half hoping, partly expecting to find a message from M. However, I noticed that I was checking less and less as the days stretched into weeks. During our connection, I began to rediscover aspects of myself that I had previously allowed to slip away. I started painting again, got back in touch with old acquaintances, and even went to the beach for a weekend by myself. I experienced a mixture of dread and excitement as the month's end drew near. Another part of me, which was getting stronger every day, questioned if perhaps this separation was for the best, but I still wanted to see him again to see if we could salvage what we had. I received a call from an unknown number the day before our scheduled meeting. I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years when I responded. The shaky voice of my sister. "Please, don't get married to Emu." Suddenly, my world began to shift on its axis once more. However, that is a tale for a future update. I apologize for leaving you waiting, but I need time to think about what transpired next. I appreciate everyone listening and helping me get through this nightmare. I will return soon with additional details about the story. Update 2. My previous update was almost 11 months ago. I'm sorry for the extended silence, but I needed time to take it all in. I appreciate your support and patience, everyone. My estranged sister had just given me a startling phone call urging me not to marry M when I left off. From there, however, things only became more difficult. I met M the following day as scheduled after that enigmatic call. I knew something was seriously wrong the moment I laid eyes on him. He had black circles under his eyes and appeared gaunt. I was about to respond when he suddenly exclaimed, "I made a terrible mistake." My heart fell. My world was shattered by his next statement. With his voice hardly audible above a whisper, he admitted, I married your sister." I briefly believed I had misheard him. How was it possible for him to wed my sister? Only a month has passed since our separation. I experienced a wave of nausea as the reality set in. M then told me an absurd story that sounded like the storyline of a poorly written soap opera. My family apparently persuaded M to listen to them after I left that day. They told him stories about my early years, portraying my sister as the victim and myself as the troublemaker. What's the worst? He took them at face value. I felt offended and bewildered. "Your family seemed so sincere and I thought maybe I didn't have the full picture," M attempted to clarify. I made a foolish choice. My sister and parents had hatched a complex scheme. To avoid being made fun of by his family, they proposed that M wed my sister for the ceremony. After the commotion subsided, they could have the marriage dissolved or divorced. Despite the absurdity of the proposition, M had somehow consented while he was confused and being manipulated. Stunned into stillness, I sat. I was so deeply and profoundly betrayed that I was at a loss for words to describe how angry and heartbroken I was. I got up at last. "I never want to see you again," I stated in a remarkably composed tone. "You, my sister, my parents. You're all dead to me now." The weeks that followed were a jumble of suffering, rage, and incredulity. Unable to face the world, I took a leave of absence from my job. Despite the support of my friends, I was distraught. During this depressing time, M's mother called me out of the blue. Something compelled me to answer the phone even though I didn't want to at first. "Please," she said in a tearful voice. "I must see you. You must be aware of something." I agreed to meet her against my better judgment. At a little park close to my place, we first met. Her eyes were red from sobbing, and she looked terrible. She disclosed the whole scope of what had happened. M had been duped by my family, who had played on his fears and fed him tales about my background. They had persuaded him that I was unstable and that I had fabricated tales about my family in the past. But why would he believe them over me? Still having trouble understanding, I asked. Tragically, she shook her head. He had a susceptible condition. Your relatives took advantage of the fact that your abrupt departure had unsettled him. She clarified that M's family had opposed the hurried union with my sister. Despite their attempts to dissuade him, M had carried out the plan while in a confused and manipulated state. "And now?" I inquired, fearing the response. "Your sister won't get a divorce from him. By threatening to demand a large amount of alimony if he attempts to leave her, she has been dragging the marriage along. However, the disclosures did not end there. She informed me that my sister had told them the truth about everything a few days prior while intoxicated. She acknowledged that all they had told him about me was false and that they had trapped him. She even came clean about the essay that had been taken all those years ago. Her words, "M has been devastated since then. He'd like to speak with you. He claims that he made the most significant error of his life and is unsure of how he would ever be able to apologize. Perhaps you can speak and decide what to do next," he hopes. With my head spinning from all this new knowledge, I gazed at her. I felt somewhat vindicated because the truth had finally surfaced. However, a greater portion of me was just worn out. "Well," I answered in a stern tone. "Thank you for sharing all of this with me, but M and I are no longer a we." He decided. Regardless of their marital status, he is now my sister's husband. I refuse to interfere or assist him in getting out of this situation. When I said this, she sobbed and begged me to change my mind, but I refused. Telling her, my decision is final. I've moved on from that phase of my life. I'm unable to reopen those wounds. She texted me several times over the course of the following few days, urging me to speak with M, but I didn't reply. All of this was too much for me to handle anymore. I thought a lot about everything that had happened, including the life I had nearly committed to, the man I thought I knew who had deceived me so profoundly, and the family that had never really welcomed me. And I came to the crucial realization that I was stronger than everything. At that moment, I decided to use my experience as a springboard rather than a setback. I had been granted another opportunity to live my life as I had always desired, free from the burdens of my past. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. In order to resolve my trust difficulties and the residual pain from my family's betrayal, I began therapy. I became closer to my pals and was even more grateful for the family I had chosen for myself. And what do you know, things improved. It wasn't always easy, and on some days I felt like the hurt and rage would get the better of me, but I gradually began to recover. I can state with confidence that I'm in a better place than I've ever been after 10 months. I've taken up new interests, gotten promoted at work, and even resumed dating, albeit informally and much more cautiously. Ever since that day in the park with M's mother, I haven't heard from M or my family. I'm thankful they're no longer in my life, but occasionally I wonder what happened to them. They are responsible for the repercussions of their own acts. I want all of you out there who may be experiencing anything similar to know that things get better. You are stronger than you realize, even though it may not feel like it right now. Never allow a friend, family member, or romantic partner to make you feel less valuable than you actually are. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. This is going to be my last update on the matter. This chapter of my life is coming to an end, and I'm looking forward to many more joyful ones. Cheers to fresh starts, selected families, and the inner strength we discover when we need it most.